Production by Liang Gu, author of Lijiazhuang, Zhao Shuli. Chapter 1. There is a Dragon King temple in Lijiazhuang, and the temple visitor is called Old Song. Lao Song originally had a name, but because of his old age, no one mentioned his name, and because of his low status, no one called him anything. Regardless of whether he is an old man with a white beard or a child who can only talk, everyone calls him Old Song. In 1989, before the anti-Japanese war, the Dragon King Temple also held sacrifices and was regarded as a village hall. Lijiazhuang, the owner of Zayudatang, was also the village head and community leader. Therefore, Lao Song also had two jobs, as a village policeman and as a temple administrator. There is a bell hanging in the temple, and Lao Song likes to hear the bell ringing the most. Ringing the bell also has two meanings. If it only rings 3 times, often Lao Song rings it himself, it means that someone is worshipping God. If it rings continuously, it means that someone is worshipping the God. Just someone to reason with. Some people worship the gods, and Lao Song can eat a portion of the offerings. Some people argue, and Lao Song can eat a portion of pancakes. One day, Lao Song was making breakfast when he heard the temple door ringing, and then heard the bell ringing. Look through the bamboo curtain. The one who rings the clock is Chuanxi, the teacher in the village. Chuanxi is from this village, his official name is Lijiazhuang, and he is the nephew of the owner of Zayudatang. A few years ago, Lao Song called Chuanxi, Chuanxi. Now Chuanxi is already in his 20s and has graduated from middle school. He also teaches elementary school in this village, so he can no longer be called Chuanxi. But it was a bit embarrassing for an old man who was nearly 60 years old to call a young man he had watched grow up as Sir. Lao Song saw that he was the one ringing the clock. Although I couldn't think of what to call him at the moment, I hurriedly came out to greet him. After he finished ringing the bell, I greeted him. Sit down in the room. What do you want to do with someone? Chuanxi didn't seem to notice his reception. She walked into the room and gave him an order without saying a word. Go and report to the village chief that Iron Saw has cut down my mulberry trees. Let me know when. Lao Song went. After waiting for a while, Lao Song came back and said, the village chief hasn't gotten up yet. The village chief said there will be a meeting at noon today. Chuanxi said, okay. She stood up and left without looking back. Lao Song made the rice, put it in a big bowl, held it in his hand, walked out of the temple, locked the temple door, and notified various office staff and the victims. He was looking for people while eating, and after he finished eating, he was looking for people everywhere, and finally walked to Fu Shunchang grocery store. Notified Wang Anfu, the shopkeeper, and took another 20 kilograms of white noodles back to the temple. These 20 kilograms of noodles are for making pancakes during meetings. In the past, when there was no village office, villagers would ask the community leader to explain things to them. When speaking, whether it is the head of the society, the original victim, witnesses. The temple manager and the helper each ate a pound of pancakes. When they arrived and finished talking, the victim was given 40% for the reasonable ones and 60% for the unreasonable ones. Since the Republic of China, the village office has been established. Later, Yan Shishan cleverly established a litigation committee, no matter how it was changed. In Lijiazhuang, there are only new rules added to the old rules. In terms of reasoning, there are only a few more pancakes. In addition to the members, victims, witnesses, and helpers, there is also one for each person, such as the deputy village chief, the neighborhood chief, and the mediator. A big bowl that can be eaten at home. At noon, the pancakes were baked and everyone came. There was a club leader named Xiao Mao who distributed pancakes to everyone first. Lijiazhuang, the owner of Ziyudatang, was the village chief and the club leader, and Li Chuanxi was the teacher and the owner. As usual, 2 copies. As usual, there are 2 copies for those with 2 titles, and 1 portion for those with only 1 title. But there are differences. Like Lao Song, although he is also a village policeman and temple administrator, he can only get 1 share as usual. Although Xiao Mao himself is a share. But the village chief only ate a bowl of scrambled eggs as usual, and Xiao Mao took the rest back as usual. As usual, there are still 2 or 3 portions left, because I am afraid that someone will come along and eat the empty portion as usual. After eating the bread, the tables were put together and the village chief sat in his seat. The mediator was Wang Anfu, the shopkeeper of Fu Shanchang. He sat down next to the village chief, and the rest of the people also sat down in turn. Xiao Mao said, "Speak up, sir. Your accuser, you speak first." Chuanxi said, "Okay, I'll talk first." She moved her chair forward. He pushed up his sleeves with both hands, straightened his spine and said, "I have a broken toilet outside the south wall of Zhangtiesua." Tai Suo interjected, "Yours?" Lijiazhuang shouted, "What are you doing? You don't understand any rules. You can tell me when I ask you." He turned around and pointed at Chuanxi with his mouth, "Say it." Chuanxi continued, "There is a small mulberry tree next to the toilet. It is almost not my turn to pick the mulberry leaves every year. Someone else picks them as soon as the buds come out. Yesterday, when it was falling too fast, my family went to pick leaves from this mulberry tree. The woman Zhang Tiesua said she was stealing their mulberry leaves and refused to let her go. I happened to meet her when I came back from school. I talked to her a few words before she let go. Originally, I wanted to go to Zhang Tiesua and ask him to discipline his woman, but later when I thought about it, just leave it alone, why bother with her? So I didn't go looking for him. As soon as I went out this morning, I saw that the mulberry tree was no longer there, so I went to look for the iron lock first. As soon as I entered the door I said, 'Iron lock. Who cut down the little mulberry tree next to the toilet?' His wife said, 'Me.' I said, 'Why did you chop down my mulberry tree?' She said, 'Your? Go and find out whose it is. I think I have to ask others for my stuff.' So I called the clock and asked everyone to ask me about him. I've finished speaking, let him speak. See what he means by cutting down the tree." Lijiazhuang pointed at Tai Suo with her mouth, "Zhang Tai Suo. Say it. Why do you cut down other people's trees?" Tai Suo said, "Why do you also say it is his tree?" Lijiazhuang said, "You have to ask me first before I ask you, right? You outsiders really have no rules. After 2 or 3 generations, I still refuse to accept the teaching." Xiao Mao also taught Tai Suo a lesson. "You are right to say what you think is right. Why did you talk back to the village chief first?" Tai Suo said, Yes, I'll tell you my truth. I didn't plant this mulberry tree, it grew on its own. But it grows by my toilet wall, so it's always mine, right? But it was never my turn to pick the leaves any year, and they were all stolen early." Lijiazhuang said, "Easy. Don't pull that far." Tai Suo said, "He didn't even get close." Xiao Mao said, "It's up again. Are you here to reason? Are you here to talk to the village chief?" Tai Suo said, "Why don't you ask me to speak?" Fu Shanchang shopkeeper Wang Anfu said, "Forget it. I blame us for not being able to talk about things. I think the dispute between the two parties is over who should own this toilet. Let me see it this way, Yao Tang. You said this toilet is yours. What credentials do you have? Chuanxi said, that's my ancestral property. What proof do I have? Wang Anfu said to Tai Suo again, Tai Suo, are you? What credentials do you have? Tai Suo said, even the yard and toilet were sold to my grandfather by his grandfather. I have the deed. As he said this, he took out the deed paper from his arms and handed it to Wang Anfu. Everyone gathered around to read the deed, but Li Ruzhen only looked at Chuanxi. Chuanxi said, everyone, take a look. Look, there is one toilet on the deed, but two toilets. Tai Suo said, of course there is one up there. Who doesn't know that the one I'm using now is my dad's new one? Li Ruzhen said, it's not because of your strong words. Do you remember? Tai Suo said, that happened 30 years ago. I am only 20 years old now, so naturally I can't remember it. But there are many elderly people in the village. Let's invite a few people to find out. Li Ruzhen said, are you afraid that you will be harsh? Do you still need to hire someone? I'm over 50, but I can't remember it. Xiao Mao said, I am also over 40, and I remember that there are two toilets there. Tai Suo said, Uncle Little Mao. We all have to speak with conscience. Li Ruzhen rolled her eyes and said to Tai Suo, according to you, everyone ganged up to blackmail you, right? Tai Suo knew that Li Ruzhen was about to go wild, and felt a little panicked, so he could only say, then I don't dare to say that. A woman outside the window rushed to shout, why don't you dare to say it? It's just a gang blackmail. I saw Tai Suo's wife Erniu running in, holding a child in one hand, stroking with her fingers and saying loudly, those of you over 50 can't remember. Those of you who are over 40 remember that there are only two toilets. Could it be that there are no more elderly people in the village, so the two of you are left behind? Li Ruzhen slapped the table and said, asshole. Such a lawless thing. Get out. Lao Song. Get her out. Erniu said, kick me out. I caught the thief and cut down the tree. Why don't you ask me to speak? Li Ruzhen said, did I ask you to come? Erniu said, why don't you call me? How can this kind of reasoning not be about getting right to the point? Xiao Mao said, there are 1,000 people in the family, but one person is in charge. With your man present. What are you being asked to do? Let's go, let's go. As he said that, he pushed her out. Erniu pushed Xiao Mao's hand away and said, no. It's not just about your strength. I caught the thief and chopped down the tree. Whoever kills will pay with his life. I'll accept whatever crime you're guilty of, don't implicate my man. There were more and more obedient people outside the window, nodding secretly, and some people whispered to each other, Erniu is very reasonable in what you say. While they were discussing, another person walked in from outside the temple gate. He was in his 20s, with short hair and wearing a blue satin jacket. He held a cane in his hand. When people saw him, they all took a breath of air and made way for him, just like they encountered a snake while walking. This man's name is Shao Shi, whose official name is Ji Tang. He is also Li Ruzhen's nephew. He also graduated from middle school that year. Later, he became addicted to the golden elixir, and often interacted with the bachelors in the neighborhood. He worked as a human trafficker, sold widows, sold golden elixirs, initiated lawsuits, and did everything. At this time, he joined the disciples of the third master, because the third master was Yan Shishan's. The Secretary General's cousin, Xiao Shi, hugged this thick leg and looked even more majestic. No one is afraid. As soon as he entered, he met Erniu talking, so he said to Erniu, "What is that chirping?" Except for the village chief, who is Xiao Shi's uncle, everyone else stood up and greeted Xiao Shi with a smile. However, Erniu refused to be scolded by him, so she spoke up to him. "Are you in charge? Who are you from the public office? Who invited you?" Before Erniu could finish her words, Xiao Shi hit her head with a stick and said, "Get the hell away from me. I've rebelled against you. You little brat." Xiao Mao stopped him and said, "Jitong. Don't argue with her." Then he said to Erniu, "Why don't you leave quickly?" Erniu didn't cry or leave. She puffed up her chest and said to Xiaoxi, "Kill me." Xiaoxi swung the stick and hit Erniu twice on the back hard, saying, "What will happen if I kill you?" The child's arms were also painful. The child burst into tears. Seeing that the situation was not right, the people outside the window ran in and pulled Erniu out. Erniu still refused to give in, and turned around and said, "You are the only one left alive. Are the outsiders still alive?" Others whispered to persuade, "Stop talking." What else can you say at this time? Can you still take advantage of him? The village chief spoke from inside, "All idle people should get out." "What are you doing outside?" Xiao Maozi lifted the curtain and said, "Didn't you see the tiger head sign on the temple door? The public house is an important place, and idlers are not allowed to enter." "What are you doing? Go out." The people outside the window had no choice but to cover Erniu when she went out. Seeing everyone exiting, Xiao Mao quickly turned around and greeted Xiao Shi, "Have a rest, Jitong." Lao Song. "Is the cake still hot?" Lao Song brought a plate of pancakes and said, "Put it next to the fire. It's not very cold yet." As he said this, he placed it very carefully in front of Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi was not humble either. He grabbed the pancake and ate it. He said while eating, "I just came back from the third master's place. Third master asked me to buy him a good note. I wonder if there is one in the village." Xiao Mao said, "Let's go back and ask around. Maybe there is." Li Ruzhen said, "Is third master very busy?" "Busy," Xiao Shi chewed the pancake and nodded repeatedly. "There are so many things to do. The third master also doesn't want to take care of it, but everyone can't find it. Everything that the county government cannot control. Almost all of them have found the third master." Lao Song brought the soup again. Xiao Shi took it and took a few sips. Suddenly he saw Tai Suo, so he put down the bowl and said to Tai Suo, "Tai Suo, you have to discipline that woman of yours. What does that look like to you?" Chirp. No shame at all. Aren't you afraid of other people laughing at you? Tai Suo thought, "You beat my wife and you come to teach me a lesson. What kind of world is this?" But the momentum was wrong and it made no sense, so I had to keep silent. After a pause, Xiaoxi almost finished her soup. Not even a third of the pancake has been eaten. Wang Anfu, the shopkeeper of Fu Shanchang, mentioned to everyone, "Let's get down to business." Xiao Shi stood up and said, "You guys tell me. I can't touch it either. I want to buy a few more for third master." Xiao Mao said, "Eat before you go." Xiao Shi rolled up the pancake on the plate, held it in his hand and said, "Okay, I'll take it." After that, he took the pancake, picked up his cane, and hurried away. Wang Anfu continued, "Iron lock. You said that the toilet you are using now was built by your father later. Can you find witnesses? Tai Soa said, why not? Are you afraid that old man Chen Xiufu, my neighbor, won't remember it? Chuanxi said, he can't do it. First of all, he and you are both from Lin County. Furthermore, he is your woman's grandfather and your old husband. Doesn't that mean he just speaks for you? Tai Soa said, we won't look for him. Let's look for Yang Erkue. That's a local. Chuanxi said, that won't work either. Bai Go is your brother-in-law, and he is Yang Sankue's daughter, so she is also related. Tai Soa said, you can't stop me. There are many elderly people in our village. He pointed at Lao Song and said, Old Song is in his 50s and 60s. He has no relatives with me, right? Xiao Mao stopped him and said, Old Song is a poor temple keeper. What does he know? You ask him to tell you whether he dares to be a witness or not. Lao Song. Do you know? Lao Song Xirenji is. But to be honest, he couldn't live in this temple, so he had to push it away. We have been poor since we were young, and we only care about eating all day long and don't pay attention to anything else. Li Ruzhen said, if you have a deed, just rely on the deed. It is written in the deed that you cannot ask for two. What other witnesses do you need? Although there are many elderly people in the village, no one will be your housekeeper. Xiao Mao said, that's it. I think we should talk behind the scenes. I can't keep my mouth shut like this. Everyone seemed to agree, and some people spread out to exchange opinions. Xiao Mao, the village chief, and Chuanxi played with each other for a while, and Wang Anfu also talked about the truth of the matter with the neighborhood elders. Later, Xiao Mao walked up to Wang Anfu and said, let's do this. What they want is for Tai Soa Bao to pay such a sum of money. As he spoke, he pinched the cuffs of Wang Anfu's cuffs, and then said, what do you think? Wang Anfu whispered, to tell the truth, this is the toilet they sold to others. The one I used was really made when his father, Carpenter Zhang, was still alive. I think you should remember this too. Xiao Mao said, whether you remember it or not, if it is so true, it will offend a lot of people. You think, the village chief and Chuanxi all want him to pay a certain amount of compensation. And Xiao Shi, let alone Tai Soa, I can't afford to offend anyone. Wang Anfu did not answer. Just shake his head. The neighborhood elders didn't dare to make any opinions. They all looked at Wang Anfu, the village chief, and Xiao Mao. They didn't say anything until nightfall, so they all went home to eat. In the evening, Lao Song went to various houses to call for help. Wang Anfu, the shopkeeper of Fu Shanchang, said he was ill and did not go. Among the rest, some will go and some will not. Everyone was bored in the temple for a while, and the village chief made a conclusion. The toilet was for Chuanxi. Tai Soa cut down. Among the rest, some will go and some will not. Everyone was bored in the temple for a while, and the village chief made a conclusion. The toilet was for Chuanxi. Tai Soa cut down the mulberry tree and paid 200 yuan in cash. Tai Soa paid for the pancakes and the meeting, and asked Tai Soa to pay for it. Guaranteed to leave the temple. Chapter 2. The old man Chen Xiufu acted as the guarantor and promised that Tai Soa would pay back the money in 1 month before letting Tai Soa out of the temple. Tai Soa was so angry that he couldn't lift his head, so the old man Xiufu took his arm and sent him home. As soon as he returned, he fell asleep on the bed and cried loudly. When Erniu asked him, he was speechless. Even the old man Xiufu couldn't stop it. After a while, the neighbors also heard it and came to inquire. Tai Suo was still crying so much that he couldn't speak. Only then did the old man Xiu Fu tell everyone the results of the treatment by the office one by one, saying, "The toilet is said to be an adult's house. Yes, I asked him to give me 200 yuan. Then cover the cost of the meeting." When Tai Suo heard the old man mention it again, he cried even harder and couldn't breathe. Everyone in the neighbors shook their heads. Nyo heard this and said, "What they said is not honorable." He put the child in front of the iron lock with a bang and said, "Here you are, you don't have to worry about this. I can't give him the money. He can't even leave the toilet. It was me who broke into the matter, it was him, it was me. No matter where you go, you won't have a good life anyway." As she said this, she jumped out of bed and ran out. It took 7 or 8 neighbors to drag her back. The child was screaming loudly on the Kong, and the old man Xiu Fu quickly picked him up. Everyone tried to persuade her separately, and Erniu temporarily calmed down her anger, and Tai Suo also stopped crying. Yang Sankue said to the old man Xiu Fu, "It's too deceiving. Not only you outsiders, but also the locals can't survive. Look at how many things happen in the village every year. Which one is not caused by someone else's manipulation? There is really no way." A young man named Leng Yuan jumped up and shouted, "Iron lock. Wait for him on the roadside of some cliff. Don't you dare to knock him into the ditch with a hoe." Yang Sankue said, "You young people really don't know how to deal with anger. I'm so angry. What's the point of saying those rash words?" Leng Yuan squatted down again. The young people pointed at Leng Yuan and laughed. "Leng Yuan, cold guy." After being bored for a while, the old man Xiufu said, "I think we can sue him. Even if we go to the county and lose the lawsuit, it would be better to end up like this." Yang Sankue said, "That's okay. When he goes to the county, he can't just tell the truth, he must at least ask the witnesses." Leng Yuandao, this is really annoying. It's a pity that I'm too young to remember, otherwise I would be willing to be your witness. Yang Sankue said, "You are young, but you are older." A few people in their 30s and 40s continued to say, "It's only been a few days since Iron Lock's father used the toilet." Almost everyone over 30 remembers it. Whoever is written in your petition counts, and anyone can prove it to you. Write a few more. Even if we all go. Erniu said to Tai Suo, "Fat boy daddy. Let's go to the county and have another fight with him. No matter how much they spend all their wealth, they can't be given an advantage." Then he said to the old man Xiu Fu, "Grandpa, don't you always say that when we come, we all come in baskets and loads?" Disappointed. After all, we can only carry one basket and one load, and it's a big enough thing. What are you afraid of? While talking, Erniu's teenage brother Bai Go came across. He ran in and shouted, "Sister! Mom is here." Erniu was getting up to pick her up, but her mother had already come in. Her mother whispered, "What are you talking about?" Leng Yuan shouted loudly, "Complain." Erniu's mother waved her hand and said, "My wife Chuanxi is listening outside the window." Everyone looked towards the window. Erniu said, "Listen to her. Can she stop me from complaining?" Everyone heard that someone was listening, so they didn't say much more. They all said to Erniu's mother, "You should try to persuade her." As he said that, he slowly dispersed. Li Ruzhen's uncles and nephews went back. Another scene, Chuanxi, Xiaoxi, and Xiao Mao all gathered in Li Ruzhen's compound and closed the dark door to celebrate their victory. After eating pancakes at noon, I was not very hungry, so Chuanxi stopped preparing food. I only spent 10 yuan to buy a row of golden elixir sticks as a gift. Lijiazhuang's Taigu cigarette lantern and Yixing magnetic pipe cannot be borrowed by anyone else except Xiao Mao so that he can inhale the ashes after he gets addicted. So Chuanxi also brought his own cigarette. The house where Lijiazhuang lived was divided into an inner and outer room. Under a lamp in the inner room, Xiao Mao was giving Lijiazhuang bubbles. Under a lamp in the outer room, two brothers, Chuanxi and Xiaoxi, slept. It's not lively inside. Because Lijiazhuang felt that Xiao Mao was only worthy of burning cigarettes, Xiao Mao did not dare to overestimate his status and was still a little restrained, so he could not talk. Xiao Mao stuck a golden elixir stick to the bucket, and Lijiazhuang sucked one. After sucking 7 or 8 times in a row, Xiao Mao dug out the ash from the pipe and stuck it back on. After sucking 7 or 8 more times, Xiao Mao dug out the ashes again, combined the 2 ashes and burned them, and Lijiazhuang fell asleep. After Xiao Mao had finished soaking the smoke, he put it on the pipe and leaned the cigarette rod towards his mouth, and then he woke up as if from a dream. Hold the rod in your mouth and suck on it. Although there were only 2 people, Xiaoxi and Chuanxi, under a lamp outside, it was much livelier than inside. They talked about a lot of material. First they talked about how rich and powerful the third master was. Later they talked about whose daughter was beautiful. Which daughter-in-law can? Finally, we talked about today's success. They were talking about Erniu, and Chuanxi said, "You were really good at beating him with those sticks today. I just couldn't think of a way to deal with him. You solved the problem as soon as you entered." Xiaoxi said, "What kind of medicine should I take for any disease? We can't even fight with a useless wife. How can we move forward in the future? Bro, you really can't do it. I think you can only teach for a lifetime." Chuanxi said, "Although she is a poor wife, she is actually very capable." Very capable. Xiaoxi shook his head and said, "Shoo." I said, "Why can't you deal with her? It turns out you saw it in your eyes." He pointed a cigarette stick at Chuanxi's nose and said, "Are you afraid that my wife will kneel down in the middle of the night if she hears this? No future, no future. You have never seen anything before, but a little mother grass ash will charm you." Chuanxi was so anxious that she couldn't find the right words to say. Xiaoxi put her head behind the pillow and burst into laughter. Chuanxi had no choice but to laugh along with him. At this moment, Lijiazhuang shouted from the inner room, quietly, "Who is knocking on the door?" The 2 of them stopped laughing as they listened, and sure enough, they heard the door knocker snap several times. Dash. Xiao Mao ran out of the hospital and asked, "Who?" A female voice outside replied, "Me." "Open it." Xiaoxi recognized the voice of Chuanxi's wife, and smiled at Chuanxi again and said, "My sister-in-law is really here." Xiao Mao opened the door and Chuanxi's wife came in. Chuanxi asked, "What's the matter?" Chuanxi's daughter-in-law whispered, "Go and listen to what Erniu said at home." When she mentioned Erniu, Xiaoxi pointed at Chuanxi and laughed, and Chuanxi also laughed. Chuanxi's daughter-in-law was confused and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Xiaoxi said, "There is a mystery here. You don't need to ask. First, tell me what you heard Erniu say." Chuanxi's daughter-in-law sat behind Xiaoxi. He pressed his elbows on Xiaoxi's waist and faced Chuanxi. He discussed in detail how Ling Yuan said rash things and how Erniu said he would break all his belongings and file a complaint in the county. Before Chuanxi could answer, Xiaoxi pushed her with her hand and said, "Go back, go back. It's okay. Who can she bite off if she sues the county? Go to the cliff and wait. Ask him which one is wise." Chuanxi also asked his wife to go back, but she left. Xiaomao went to close the door again, but Xiaoxi still boasted. Lijiazhuang shouted softly in a long voice, "Hello. Come." Xiaoxi went in. When Xiaomao saw Xiaoxi, he quickly got up and opened the door for him to lie down. He sat on a stool next to the bed and listened to what they were talking about. Lijiazhuang glanced at Xiaomao, picked up 3 or 4 golden elixir sticks and handed them to him, saying, "You can lie outside for a while." When Xiaomao saw that people didn't ask him to listen, he had no choice but to catch the stick and go outside to suck. Xiaomao sucked for the first time, and when the ashes were burning, Xiaoxi came out. When he saw Xiaoxi coming out, he naturally couldn't help it. If he didn't get up, let Xiaoxi lie down. Xiaoxi said to Chunxi, "Brother." The uncle said that if that thing really wanted to file a complaint, he could not ignore it. Xiaomao stood aside and answered, "Then we have to find a way." When Xiaoxi saw Xiaomao still nearby, she regretted that she shouldn't have said such a soft word, so she quickly put on airs and replied, "Of course there is a way." Chuanxi said, "That's nonsense. How can a little country bumpkin get his advantage in the county?" Xiaoxi glanced at Xiaomao and said, "You should go inside." Xiaomao had to take his golden elixir ash and go back to the inner room. Xiaoxi waited for him to go and whispered to Chunxi, "Of course I'm not afraid of losing him in the lawsuit. My uncle said not to ask him to start this kind of thing. Regardless of whether he can sue him or not, others say that it is always a shame for someone from Lin County to sue us." "Something," Chuanxi said. "Then we can't ask someone to keep him?" Xiaoxi said, "What is it? Is it worthy of being so polite to him? Think of a way to prevent him from suing and that's it." Chunxi said, "What method can you think of?" Xiaoxi said, "Don't be afraid. There is the third master. I will go find the third master early tomorrow morning." That night, I don't know how long it took them to disperse. The next morning Xiaoxi went to see the third master. I Suo was busy borrowing money and preparing to file a lawsuit. Naoluan pancreas ship Huanshuan gamma ci stagnant fan ji hua xing fu magnetic amaranth pei lao shu meng camp ni jian 6 shut salt dizziness attached the mother-in-law flashes. At noon, Tai Suo and Ernyo were having dinner at home. Xiaoxi led a man in, took the rope, snatched the iron-locked bowl, and tied it up. Ernyo asked, "What did he do? What crime did he commit again?" Xiaoxi said, "No need to ask. I can't run away from you." Then he took Ernyo's child and threw it on the ground, and tied Ernyo up. The villagers were sitting at the crossroads eating when they saw Xiaoxi and a stranger heading towards the iron-locked courtyard with a rope, knowing that something was up to them. Yang Sankue, the old man Xiu Fu, Ling Yuan, these few close neighbors of the iron chain followed to see what was going on. They saw that the iron locks had been tied up, and the child was crawling on the ground crying. They were about to ask why, but Xiaoxi pointed at Ling Yuan with a small stick and said, "Dash. He's there too. Tie him up." The stranger also tied up Ling Yuan. 2 people led 3 people and walked out. The old man Xiu Fu picked up the child and everyone followed. A few of the people on the street who were timid were afraid of harming themselves and walked away. The rest followed behind but could not think of a way to save themselves. Ernyo's parents and brothers. Leng Yuan's parents also caught up halfway and followed him. Everyone saw that Xiao Shi and the man he had attracted had fierce looks on their faces, and no one could get along with them. Only the old man Xiao Fu and Leng Yuan's father walked around Xiao Shi, pleading hard as they walked. Xiao Shi took people to the temple and said to Lao Song, "Please go to the village chief." Lao Song was ordered to go. The old man Xiao Fu begged Xiao Shi, "Jitang. We are all neighbors, and I don't think there is anything we can't get through. If these young people make any mistakes in their words, I have to ask you to take care of them." Xiaoxi said. "You know this too." A group of them made a plan to murder the village chief on the roadside of Yantu. The village chief found out and sent me to find the third master. When I told the third master said, "This is a thieves' move. Let's tie them up first. I heard there are a lot of people. Are you afraid that you won't know who else is there during the first trial?" Ernio heard this and said, "I caught a thief once, but something happened, and even I became a thief. Look who I killed or robbed." Xiaoxi said, "Listen. Hard thieves. Let me see, how long will you last?" The old man Xiao Fu said, "This girl. Stop talking." Li Ruzhen came, and Xiao Mao followed. Xiao Shi said to Li Ruzhen, "The third master said that we should tie up the people first. You first call a few security guards to send them away." The old man Xiao Fu became anxious when he saw what happened. He handed the child to his grandson Bai Go, pulled Xiao Mao and said, "Let me tell you something." Xiao Mao followed him outside the gate, and he said to Xiao Mao, "Please go discuss it with the village chief and Xiao Shi. See if this thing can still happen in the village." Xiao Mao has always been aware of Xiao Shi's temper. He knows that if he has money, everything will be over. Moreover, if he can come to the village to have another argument, no matter whether he succeeds or not, he will not be disappointed. At least he can always eat something. He wholeheartedly agreed, "Okay. I'm going to give you a breather. Of course, like everyone else, I just hope everything goes well in our village." After saying that, he ran to Xiao Shi and said, "Jitang. Come. Let me tell you something." Xiao Shi said, "Say it." Xiao Mao nodded again, "Come on. Here." Xiao Shi deliberately pretended to be very unwilling. Follow Xiao Mao into the Dragon King Palace. The white dog was holding the little fat boy and standing next to Ernio. The little fat boy stretched out his two little hands and pounced on Ernio. Ernio was about to touch him, but when she started to touch him, she remembered that her hands were tied behind her back, and then she glared and said, "Throw him to death. I want him to be completely clean." Although he said this, tears rolled down his eyes. Ernio's mother was very sad when she saw it, and she wiped away Ernio's tears while crying. Xiao Shi came out of the Dragon King Palace and said, "I don't think it's possible. These weeds will not shed tears until they are ashes, unless they are brought to their place." Xiao Mao followed behind. "It doesn't matter, let's talk slowly. There is no mountain that cannot be turned around, and there is nothing that cannot be overcome. Village head. Come on, let's go to your place with Ji Tang to talk." Xiao Shi ordered the person he brought, "Look at them, if you don't know, you will take them away." After that, he and the village chief left first. Xiao Mao quietly said to the old man Xiao Fu, "You have to buy 2 rows of sticks first." Xiao Fu old man said, "I don't know where to buy it." Xiao Mao said, "Just take 20 yuan in cash and I'll buy it for you." Old man Xiao Fu and Leng Yuan's father said in unison, "Okay, I'll leave it to you. Xiao Mao followed the village chief and Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi said that each person at third master's place would have to spend 150 yuan to pay foreign bills, so the total for the three of them was 450 yuan. While bargaining and haggling, Xiao Mao also acted as a witch and a ghost, running around inside and outside. It wasn't until dinner that we finally settled down. The three of us paid a total of 150 yuan from Mr. San. Give Xiao Shiha a 50 yuan tip for the person he attracted. Tai Suo and Leng Yuan held a banquet to apologize, and issued a warrant to protect the village chief's safety forever. The previous case remains unchanged. It was settled the same way as the village hall handled it yesterday. The number was fixed, and Xiao Mao said there could be no less. The old man Xiao Fu went to the temple to discuss with Tai Suo. Tai Suo knew that he couldn't overcome it, so he had to admit that he was unlucky. Niu was dissatisfied at first. Later, I couldn't think of any solution, so I had no choice but to stop making any claims. Leng Yuan just said a few words about Tai Suo. The money was still paid by Tai Suo, so he didn't have any objections. Seeing that they agreed, the old man Xiufu went to Yang Sankue and himself as guarantees. Bail the three of them out. This time the bailout was different from the last time. Chunks's money was delayed by a month, but Xiaoxi had to bring cash. Tai Suo asked old man Xiufu and Yang Sankue to borrow money from Fushanchang. Old man Wang Anfu said that the cocoons were being collected in the cabinet and there was no money to release. 0 is fine, but 100 yuan is not. Yang Sankue said to the old man Xiufu, if Fu Shanchang is not good, and there are no roads in the village, then we have to find Xiao Mao and ask him to discuss with Xiao Shi and borrow the money from the sixth master. The old man Xiufu said, Sir, that's 200 yuan. But just pick and dismantle the iron lock's little possessions. Yang Sankue said, there is nothing we can do about it. We will have to pass this level anyway. Old man Xiufu went to discuss with Tai Suo again. It turned out that the sixth master was the third master's cousin. His money lending was different from others. The interest was 3 cents per month. At the end of 3 months, all principal and profit will be returned. This kind of usury was common in the past. What is particularly different from others is the procedure for repaying the money. The handlers who take his money and release it outside are people like Xiao Shi, who are called guarantors for repayment. People make other people's money. He had no money when due, so he just bought the house and the land according to the document. The document said, if the principal and interest are not equal when due, the surety will make the decision to sell and return the pledged property. Therefore, although he did not buy the property, he is extraordinary, but no one can be short of his money. People like Xiao Shi pay 80 to 10 when they lend out money. The paperwork says 100 yuan, but in reality they can only use 80 yuan, and they use 20 yuan from it. 8 for 10, 3 points for profit. Every 3 months, the principal and interest will be paid off at maturity. If you want to use it again, it will be 8 for 10. If the money cannot be repaid, the surety must sell the property. This is the rule of the sixth master's money lending. Except when the corpse is lying on the ground or the life is at stake, almost no one dares to use the money. Iron Suo will encounter it now. This is a must-do. The old man Xiao Fu discussed with Tai Suo, but Tai Suo couldn't think of any other way, so he had to ask Xiao Mao to sue Xiao Shi and write down in the document the 15 acres of land that his father had bought after suffering 2 lifetimes. I paid the sixth master 250 yuan, actually 200 yuan. Only then can we take care of third master and Xiao Shi. The noodles, banquet money, and gold elixir stick money for the 2 meals totaled 30 yuan, which were borrowed from Fushanchang. On the third day, after the guests were invited, the matter was finally over. Tai Suo owed Chuanxi 200 yuan and the 6th master 250 yuan. I owe Fu Shanchang 30 yuan, a total of 480 yuan in foreign debt. Xiao Shi drew 50 yuan at Badangshali and got another 50 yuan as a tip. He hired the man who tied up the man for 2 yuan. Apart from the 2 yuan, he actually got 98 yuan. Li Ruzhen is not disappointed either. Xiao Shi said that the third master had to pay 150 yuan, but in fact he only paid 100 yuan to the third master, and the remaining 50 yuan went to Li Ruzhen. Xiao Mao only had good food for 2 days, and after 2 days he was satisfied. After 1 month, the silkworms are old and the wheat is ripe. Tai Suo Bao Chuanxi's 200 yuan was also due, and the 30 yuan he owed Fu Shanchang had to be repaid, which made Tai Suo's 250 yuan also feel scared. He thought, it would be better to turn the property into a property as soon as possible. If it were delayed for half a year, it wouldn't be enough to sell the entire property and it would not be enough for the 6th grandpa. I made up my mind, gritted my teeth, and first gave the cocoon to Fu Shanchang, and then sold 2 stones of wheat to pay for Fu Shuanchang's 30 yuan. I also sold 10 acres of land to Li Ruzhen, and paid back the 6th master's 150 yuan was exchanged for 8 or 10. He gave Chuanxi the house in the courtyard where he lived. He also gave Chuanxi 3 stones of wheat as a payment of 200 yuan, and moved to a house that had been used to feed animals by the rolling road outside the courtyard gate. In this way, only 5 acres of land and a house that had been used to feed animals were left. Because Chuanxi had many brothers, the house she was assigned was not spacious. Now that I had acquired the Tiesua courtyard, I was filled with joy. I hired craftsmen to mend the eaves, tie up the dust, paint the walls, and add facades. Within a few days, I repaired the courtyard very elegantly. After the repairs were completed, I moved in with my wife. Go live inside. Locked up. After moving to the house where the livestock had been fed, just the hoe and rake, the pots and jars, the pots, spoons, bowls, chopsticks, and baskets, took up 2 of the 3 houses, and the remaining 1, with a donkey trough in the middle. A pot stand was built in front of the trough, and a bed was built on top of the trough. It was so crowded that even the water tank couldn't fit in. Tai Suo lives in a house like this. How can he not be angry when he gets up every day and looks at the newly painted door and gold plaque opposite? He fell ill within a few days and remained ill for several months, even though medicine was ineffective. As the saying goes, heart disease must be treated with heart medicine. Later, the third master went to Taiyuan. Xiaoxi and Chuanxi both followed. Someone said, more than 100 households in the county have jointly filed a lawsuit against him. Someone said, the third master's brother is Yan Shishan's Secretary General. He is an official with less than 10,000 people. I heard that he is causing trouble at home, outrageous. He was called to the provincial capital and locked up. No matter what you say, it's not good for the third master. After hearing the news, Tai Suo felt relieved and his illness gradually got better. Chapter 3. Tai Suo has changed his condition since then. After getting sick, life becomes worse day by day. Fortunately, he had learned carpentry and plastering from his father since he was a child. Although he had never been employed, he could still be a helper for others, so he had to carry the furniture and go outside to meet other craftsmen. A pocket expense. In the summer of the 19th year of the Republic of China, one of Yan Shishan's subordinates, Mr. Li, was building a mansion in Taiyuan. The contractor was someone who had worked with Tai Suo, so he sent someone to ask Tai Suo to go to Taiyuan. When Tai Suo arrived, he heard that labor costs in Taiyuan were high. Secondly, I wanted to find out what happened to the third master. Thirdly, the little fat boy no longer drank milk, and Erniu could grow the 5 acres of land at home, so he agreed. Within a few days, Tai Suo prepared trays of dry food and clothes and shoes. I went to Taiyuan with a few colleagues. At this time, Yan Shishan claimed that the Third Front Army of the National Revolutionary Army was sending troops to overthrow Chiang Kai-shek and attack Peiping. Because of the military victory, Commander Li planned to build his residence in Peiping in the future. Therefore, I telegraphed to the supervisor in Taiyuan to temporarily suspend the work in Taiyuan. As the work was temporarily suspended, Tai Suo and the others had nothing to do, so they had to find a room to stay in the guild hall for the time being. There is no need to pay rent for the house in the guild hall. Unfortunately, they couldn't move in anymore after 4 or 5 days. When someone came, they nailed a sign, 48th Division Retention Area, outside the door, informing them to find a house and move that day. If they wanted to stay, they had to rent another house and move out. A few days later, it rained. Tai Suo remembered that he still had a pair of old shoes left under the bed in the guild hall, so he ran there to look for them again. As soon as he entered the door, he saw that the room had completely changed, the floor was swept clean, and the tables and chairs were arranged neatly. On the table were half-foot-long large ink cartridges, printing boxes and a lot of exquisite stationery. The bed was also very clean, with a man in a fine military uniform lying on it smoking opium. When the person looked up at him, he saw that it was Xiao Shi. It was like meeting a snake again. He backed down, thinking something was going to happen again, and didn't know what to do. Xiao Shi smiled calmly at him and said, "Iron Suo? Who do I think you are? When did you get here? Come in." This was the first time that Tai Suo saw him being so polite to him. Although I don't know what his true intentions were, it seemed that he stopped losing his temper right away. Moreover, based on the relationship in the village in the past, since he was asked to come in, he was afraid of something happening if he didn't go in, so he had no choice but to stand next to his bed. Xiao Shi pointed to the paper cigarette placed next to the cigarette tray with his mouth and said, "Smoking." Tai Suo felt that it was good enough to deal with this kind of people without getting into trouble. He didn't have the heart to smoke, so he declined, "I just smoked it." Xiao Shi picked up one and handed it to him, "Suck it." In this way, he felt that it was not good not to smoke, so he lit a cigarette lamp and stood on the edge of the bed to smoke. While smoking, he thought about why Xiao Shi was so polite to him, but he couldn't think of a reason. "Come." Although Xiao Shi still used the tone of a superior person talking to ordinary people, she also seemed to be asking him questions affectionately, asking him who he came with, what he was doing now, where he lived, whether he had any housing fees, etc. After asking him, he knew he had no job now, so he said to him, "You suffering people can't afford to live alone. Logically speaking, we are fellow villagers. If you encounter difficulties, I should take care of you, but I don't know who the repairman is. Otherwise, you can come here and work for me." A job? Tai Suo felt that he was relying on hard work to make a living, no matter what he did, but when he saw him wearing military clothes, he was afraid that he would become a soldier after him, so he asked, "Is being a serviceman a soldier?" Xiao Shi saw him asking this question and already guessed what he was thinking, so she replied, Soldiers are different from each other. This soldier does not fight, and is not mobilized. He just lives here and tidies up the house. When guests come to pour tea, he walks around the streets. In terms of making money, the regular salary is 8 yuan a month. There is a guest playing cards, and you can get a few pocket money each time. Soldiers are different from each other. This soldier does not fight, and is not mobilized. He just lives here and tidies up the house. When guests come to pour tea, he walks around the streets. In terms of making money, the regular salary is 8 yuan a month. There is a guest playing cards, and you can get a few pocket money each time. Isn't this something that cannot be grabbed? Several people have come here to exercise, but I haven't agreed yet. I just asked you to come because you have nothing to do and I want to take care of you. If you don't want to come, forget it. Just saying. Hearing the bicycles in the yard taking off their leather shoes, as soon as the bicycle stopped, another man in military uniform came in. Xiaoxi quickly stood up and gave way to sit down, and the iron lock also moved away from the bed and under the window. The man was not humble and walked to the bed and lay down opposite Xiaoxi. Xiaoxi pointed at the iron lock and said to the man, "Chief of Staff, I have hired a servant for our left-behind office. The people in my village are very loyal and honest." The man said lazily, "That's fine." Xiaoxi then he said to Tai Suo, "Tai Suo, you go back and think about it. If you want to come, come tonight. If not, tell me so that I can use others." Although Tai Suo couldn't decide whether he should do it or not, he still felt that it was time to go, so he hurriedly replied, "Okay, then I'll leave." Xiaoxi did not get up to see him off, but only said to him, "Okay, let's go." He walked out. The chief of staff said, "This kid is quite capable, but he seems to have no courage and dare not speak loudly when he sees others." Xiaoxi said, "That's not necessarily true, but he doesn't dare to be so presumptuous when he sees me, because of his past relationship. Different." The chief of staff said, "Why do you think of using a servant?" Xiaoxi said, "I am preparing to tell you." As he said that, he first took out a pack of dough and handed it to the chief of staff. He also took out a cigarette, wrapped a piece of paper around it for smoking the dough, and reported to him. Not long ago, a clerk from the Zhengda Hotel was looking for the 48th Division's detention center on the street. He said that a guest from Hunan asked him to look for it. Finally, he asked the police station here and found this place. I asked him the reason and then told him. There is no person in charge here today. Ask him to come tomorrow. I was about to smoke a cigarette and report to your mansion when the man from my village came in. Before I could say a few words, you came in. According to their ranks, Xiaoxi is a captain's adjutant, and the chief of staff is a major general. What's the difference in rank? Xiaoxi should report everything immediately and speak more respectfully. Why could Xiaoxi still lie with him slowly and talk so casually? It turned out that the 48th Division was a new team that Yan Xishan was preparing to form. At first, only one division commander was appointed, and the chief of staff was introduced by the division commander. There was no soldier, and development relied entirely on the division commander's methods. The division commander's surname was Hua. He had some dealings with bandits in northern Hunan, and he used this capital to get the appointment as division commander. He said, "As long as there is a name, soldiers are not a problem." Xiaoxi also understands this. Although the chief of staff graduated from the Imperial University of Japan, he is separated from the world and cannot communicate with the bandits as well as Xiaoxi. Moreover, Xiaoxi is related to the Secretary-General system. Therefore, the chief of staff had to give him some credit. Xiao Shi explained the reason for not reporting him immediately. Seeing that he didn't say anything, she handed him the cigarette with a paper strip in her hand and asked him to smoke it. Then she said to him, "I miss this guest." It must have been after Lao Huo went to contact us that he came to formally contact us. Since he is staying at the Zhengda Hotel when he comes, he must be very impressive. We also have to make our stay look elegant so that we will not be looked down upon by him. That's why I plan to find a job. Xiao Shi's words made sense to the chief of staff, and he praised, "Yes. This is very necessary. I think there needs to be not only an attendant, but also a guard at the door. I still have a few people looking for trouble. I'll send you 2 when I get back. You can train them in the afternoon and give each of them a set of the clothes we received. The plan has been decided." The chief of staff smoked for a while, chatted some other gossip, and then went back to the mansion. Tai Suo came out of the mansion. It feels strange. He thought, why did Xiao Shi become so kind? Why did he suddenly feel better towards himself? It is said that the bed is pregnant with the falcon by the chimney, and the bed is pregnant with the falcon. Killing the rabbit and spreading its crumbs to expose the trouble. In the end, he thought of 2 possibilities. The first is that Xiao Shi needs to hire people, and when he can't find a reliable person, he looks for someone on his own. The second is that Xiao Shi feels that he has been sorry for himself in the past, and his conscience suddenly shows up, so he comes to take care of himself to make up for the shortcomings in his conscience. He wants it for the first reason. He uses people to make money, which is also a fair transaction. Even though he works as an errand for him, people like us are just serving people. If it is the second reason, that would be even better. The grudges in this life will be resolved in this life. This will save you from retribution in the next life, because Tai Suo still believes in retribution in the next life. He thought that whether it was the first or the second kind, it was harmless to him and he could do it. He completely thought that Xiao Shi had changed for the better. Go back to where you live and talk to a few colleagues. Colleagues thought that people like Xiao Shi would never get better in 1,000 years, but they agreed to do what he was doing now, which was the first reason he agreed with. The matter was decided in this way, and Tai Suo packed up his luggage and moved to the guild hall. Tai Suo arrived at the guild hall. The 2 people sent by the chief of staff also arrived, and Xiao Shi trained separately in the courtyard, teaching the 2 people how to stand guard, how to salute when meeting officials, how to shout when meeting common people, and what words to use when meeting guests. How to pass business cards, teach iron locks to fetch water. Pouring tea, lighting cigarettes, and other actions. It was as if he was teaching an opera, one moment counting the guests, the other the messengers. He led the 3 people to practice all afternoon, and then handed out costumes and armbands in preparation for receiving guests the next day. The next morning, the chief of staff arrived without eating. He came in and first asked how the preparations were, and then ate in the detention area. After dinner, he and Xiao Shi were still lying on the bed, sucking food while preparing to entertain this unknown green forest hero. Xiao Shi told him how to deal with these people with a certain amount of style and politeness. He was somewhat generous and self-centered, and the chief of staff also praised him very much. They had reached an agreement, so they chatted some more and waited for the person on guard to give them their business cards. The 2 men standing guard outside had never served in the military, so they felt a little fresh when they put on their new military uniforms and carried them. Therefore, there was inevitably a fight. At first the 2 of them practiced saluting separately, and then they took turns with one of them walking in as the chief of staff, and the other saluting. Once, one of them saluted, but the chief of staff did not return the salute, and the two got into a fight. When the chief of staff said, "I am the chief of staff, it is up to me to return the gift or not," the other said, "If you don't even know how to return a gift, what the hell do you think you are the chief of staff?" At this moment, a foreign car pulled a guest and stopped outside the guild hall. The guests jumped out of the car. When the two men on guard saw someone coming, they quickly stopped making noise and still stood at their posts. They were about to ask the guest, but the guest asked first, "Is there a person in charge inside?" One replied, "Yes. Staff officer, stay alive." Before I had time to ask the guest where he was from, the guest didn't bother to communicate or hand over his business card. He puffed up his chest and walked in. Xiao Shi just packed a mouthful of food and lit it with a match. "Suck, I heard someone coming in from outside, I thought they were on guard." Ignoring it, I kept sucking it down. Smoke is entering the throat, and the guest is lifting the curtain. When Xiao Shi saw the person coming in, he was wearing a big silk shirt and a mustache, and he knew some of his origins. He quickly threw the cigarette and the stuffing into the cigarette tray, secretly complaining to the guard. The chief of staff also sat up. The guest came in and said, "Which one of you is in charge?" Xiao Shi saw that he was arrogant, so he quickly pointed at the chief of staff and pressed him with his official title. "This is the chief of staff of the division." Unexpectedly, the guest did not lose any dignity. He pointed at the chief of staff with his mouth and asked, "Are you the chief of staff?" The chief of staff said, "Yes, is there anything wrong?" The guest turned the chair next to the table without waiting for him to sit down, and sat facing the chief of staff. "Brother is from Hunan. Lao Hua has contacted our boss and sent a letter to send a brother to pick up the things." As he said this, he took out a ruler with a ruler from his bag and handed it to Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi handed the letter to the chief of staff and asked Tai Suo to pour tea. The chief of staff caught the letter and saw that it was written by Lao Hua. It is said that a regiment has been assembled. The left-behind office is required to prepare a document to request the uniforms, armbands, weapons, supplies, and other items of the entire regiment from the munitions department. A list of officers at all levels in the regiment is also required. The left-behind office is required to fill out a petition. The chief of staff looked at it and said, "Is your brother the regiment commander?" The guest said, "No. The group leader is the head of our group, and the brothers just follow us to make ends meet." The chief of staff took the list and asked him, "Which one is?" The guest stood up and approached the chief of staff, pointed to the name on the list and said, "This is our head, and this one is my brother. I will be the chief of staff for the time being." The chief of staff said, "Your surname is Wang?" The guest said, "Yes. My brother's surname is Wang." The chief of staff said, "Come here and live in where?" The guest said, "Staying at the Zhengda Hotel." The chief of staff said, "Let's move here later." He then said to Xiao Shi, adjutantly, "Let's prepare a house for Counselor Wang later." The guest said, "That's not necessary. This brother has just arrived in Taiyuan and wants to do some sightseeing and live outside. Just be casual." The chief of staff said, "That's fine. Whatever you need, just come here to find adjutantly." Xiao Shi also continued, "Okay. You can ask me for anything you need." The guest said, "Thank you for your concern. Nothing else is needed, it's just that it's hard to buy it from Lao Hai in Shangxi." He turned to Xiao Si and said, "I just saw your brother sucking this, Please help me buy some. He took out a 500 yuan note from his wallet and handed it to Xiao Shi. Xiao Shi caught the ticket and said, "Okay. I can help with this." After that, she got up from the bed and asked him, "There are some more here. Take a few puffs first." After saying that, he took out a small paper bag from under the cigarette tray and put it outside. The guest was very kind to himself, so he gave in casually, then lay down and started smoking. Xiao Shi took the money, but it took a while. Thinking. He thought, "You can't buy it by sending people. I go to the streets by myself, but I don't have enough style, and I'm afraid that the guests will look down on me." After thinking for a while, I finally decided to write a letter and send it to Tai Suo. He sat on the table and finished writing the letter, then went out to the door and called, "Zhang Tiesuo. Go to the 5th master's mansion." Tiesuo asked, "Where is it?" Xiao Shi said, "The house number of the Temple of Heaven and Earth is number 10. He handed him the letter and the money and said, "Buy the materials." On the day I bought the materials, I was in Taiyuan. It was nominally a crime of beheading. Tai Suo said, "I dare not bring it." Xiao Shi whispered, "Fool! You are wearing the armband of the 48th Division. Is there anyone who dares to ask questions when buying ingredients at the 5th master's mansion?" Seeing that he said there was no danger, Tai Suo accepted the letter and the money. Xiao Shi then ordered, "Go to his Shaonan room, give the letter to Mr. Zhang, and ask him to find his aunt's mother, and he will know." Tai Suo agreed and went. Tai Suo found number 10 of the Temple of Heaven and Earth, pushed the door, and it was closed inside. He knocked on the door twice, and a man came out and said, "Who?" As the door opened a crack, a head squeezed out and asked, "Who are you looking for?" Tai Suo said, "Look for Mr. Zhang." After saying that, I handed him the letter in my hand. The man said, "Wait a minute." He shrunk his head and turned back. Tai Suo waited for a short time, and the man came out again and shouted, "Come in." Tai Suo followed him in. After saying that, I handed him the letter in my hand. The man said, "Wait a minute." He shrunk his head and turned back. Tai Suo waited for a short time, and the man came out again and shouted, "Come in." Tai Suo followed him in. Sure enough, he led him to the small south room. Seeing that there were many people inside, Tai Suo asked, "Who is Mr. Zhang?" A thin old man in his 40s was sitting at the northwest corner table and said, "Me." "Just wait a moment. Heizi's wife is here." Went up to the train station. No one is here. Heizi is the name of this wife's village. Ironlock had no choice but to wait, so he sat on a small stool behind the door and idly watched the people in the room. In the southwest corner of the room, there is a bed with a lamp in the middle. There were 2 people lying on the bed. One was a small man with a sharp mouth. One has a flat eye socket. There was a man sitting beside the bed, with his neck stretched out like a duck, one elbow leaning on the sharp-billed monkey's leg, and his eyes looking into the sunken eye sockets. In his hand, the hollow-eyed man held a piece of gold foil from a cigarette box, and also held a small paper tube made of hard paper and about the thickness of a finger. He picked the material onto the gold foil, got up, put it on the lamp holder and smoked it. He held a small paper tube in his mouth and pointed it at the smoked area. There were 3 of them, one sucking and passing it on to the other. The house is not big, and there is a coffee table and 2 small stools placed east of the bed. It lines up to the root of the east wall. There is a copper plate on the coffee table, and there is a cut watermelon on the plate. Sitting on the stool to the east was a fat man with a square face, wearing a white shirt that was unbuttoned, revealing a big belly. On the stool to the west, sitting there was a young man with a parted hair. After wearing a piece of clothing, the hair will burst and the hair will fall apart. Zheng Tao presents hard worms. You are proud of the food Chlorinehui hard emperor eggplant garden. A flood poppy harmony is still is identical to egg thunder cherry boring swan bestows wealth and tricks yo induces the house to call shallow fate fluke and calls Chinsi Meng Yuxian. Regardless of whether they were on the bed or next to the coffee table, they were all talking lively, but Tai Sua sounded like there were a lot of things he didn't understand. They started talking at some point. After Tai Sua sat down, the first thing he heard was the pillar saying to the fat man, "The most important thing is to return to work." "I haven't returned to work until now." The fat man said, "I don't care, as long as I show I have a good body, legs, and speed. When it comes to returning to work, I would rather go back to work. I've been in class for 2 years, haven't I been out yet? Let's take turns." It took more than 50 years of the Republic of China for my turn to come, so what's the point? The sunken eye socket on the bed said to the duck neck, "Listen. Everyone says it's time to go back to work. Are we here?" Duck neck said, "Those of us who are not students should not go looking for trouble." Everyone laughed. The fat man said to the person on the bed, "It's just as fast as you, just go to the Secretary General to register a few more times." The sharp-mouthed monkey said, "Although you are slower, you will be the county magistrate and section chief as soon as you get out, either the tax bureau or the supervisor." Ten Yanshu said, "No matter what, as long as there is a lot of money." Yuck Neck said, "As long as the Secretary General is willing to take care of me, I don't care about anything." Fifth Master has never been to school, so he is not the section chief of the Civil Affairs Department. Third Master is also from a family college, so he is not the county magistrate of Huaran County. Tai Sua inadvertently inquired about the whereabouts of the third master. He was afraid that it was not the case, so he asked, "Which third master?" Duck Neck glanced at him and snorted, "Which third master? How many third masters are there in our county?" Tai Sua stopped asking. What Zhu Zhu said came back again. He also said that it was important to return to work. The fat man said to him, "Your brother is a little too naive. Now that Hebei has been conquered, it is time to hire people. You better listen to me. Let's take a ride to Peiping tomorrow. When we get there, we only need to find the Secretary General, and he will be able to do everything he can to the county magistrate." "Not a problem." That Zhu Zhu rushed to say, "I don't believe it. How can I get a job if I don't return to work?" The fat man said, "You are returning to Shangxi class. What's the use of going to Hebei? Besides, when you return to class, you can only be assigned to a selective class, so what's the use? Wouldn't it still be impossible to get out if you don't find a way out?" While they were quarreling, the outer door opened again, and many people came in randomly. At the head was a bearded man wearing glasses. As soon as he entered the door, he looked at the two people on the coffee table. "Greet." He saw there was uneaten watermelon on the coffee table. "Grab it and eat it while letting others come with you." He ate watermelon and asked, "What are you two arguing about?" The fat man told Zhu Zhu about going back to work. The man with glasses didn't finish listening, so he stopped and said, "Shit. This is the time to hire people. As long as you find the Secretary General, you can still be the county magistrate even if you wear a broomstick and a top hat. What about choosing a shift and taking it in turns? Now let's get him a rush shift first." As soon as I mentioned the rush to work, the old and new customers laughed together and said, We've returned to work too. Grab a commission. Although Tai Sua didn't know anything about the class, he understood that they were looking for trouble. Just as he was watching them laughing, someone suddenly pushed from behind him. Is this Tai Sua? Tai Sua looked back and saw that it was Chuanxi. He also came in with the group wearing glasses. When he saw that it was indeed Tai Sua, he asked, "You also became a soldier?" Tai Sua was going to answer, but when he saw him squeezing into other people, he just let it go. Chuanxi squeezed to the edge of the bed and said to the duck-necked man, "Let me take the plane too." After saying this, he took out a small paper bag from the little straw hat. Squeeze onto the bed. The man wearing glasses said to Mr. Zhang, "Go and see if Mr. Wu has finished the letter he wrote to Section Chief Wang of the Munitions Department." Mr. Zhang went. The pillar asked, "Have you been introduced to the Munitions Department?" The man wearing glasses said, "No." The Secretary General sent a telegram asking us to go to Peiping. Since it is difficult to buy tickets for buses, we plan to borrow a special bus from the Military Supplies Department to Peiping tomorrow. Fatty said, "Can you sit more or 2 more people?" Wearing the glasses, "I'm afraid we are just 20 or 30 people alone." You can still be careless if you add more, but you won't be able to do it if you add more. As he said that, Mr. Zhang had already taken out the letter. The man with glasses caught the letter and left with the group of people who came with him. Chuanxi also packed up the materials and rushed out. The fat man rushed to the door and shouted, "Definitely. Borrow light." The outsider replied, "Okay. Only 1 or 2 people." They went, and Mr. Zhang asked Tai Sua, "How do you recognize him?" Tai Sua said, "He is from the same village as me." Mr. Zhang said, "That man is very capable and can make money at the Datong Taxation Bureau." The Secretary General thinks highly of him, and he is among the dozens of people he requested via telegram this time. He just came back from Datong by train yesterday. Just as he was talking, my concubine's mother came back from the train station, and Tai Sua bought the materials and went back to pay the errand, sent away the guests from Hunan. The Chief of Staff immediately prepared a submission and sent it to the headquarters. He also asked Xiao Shi, the acting secretary, to fill out the petition and get the armband printed. Chapter 4. Within a few days, rumors spread on the streets that the war had been defeated in Shandong, and that a plane from Nanjing had landed in Taiyuan. People were panicked, and the price of tickets in Shaanxi also dropped. A few days later, the General Headquarters issued an order to the 48th Division's Left Behind office, saying that development was to be suspended. Naturally, none of the requested items were issued. The Chief of Staff received the order, responded to the guests from Hunan, and sent Xiao Shi to go to northern Hunan to find Lao Hua. From then on, the kitchen in the leftover office was also closed down, and the guards were dismissed. The Chief of Staff also left, and Xiao Shi also left. Tai Sua was asked to go to the Chief of Staff every day to receive 15 cents for food. Live in the residence and guard the door. At first, 15 cents was enough to eat. Later, Shaanxi's ticket prices kept plummeting, and I could only buy a pound of soft rice cakes for 15 cents. I went to the Chief of Staff to ask for an increase. The Chief of Staff said, "Go and find your own business. There's no need to look at the door there." This is how the detention center ended. Tai Sua worked as a soldier for a month and didn't receive any money. When Xiao Shi left, the Chief of Staff ignored him and left behind only a single military uniform. He didn't dare to wear it or sell it, so he had to take it off and wrap it up. He thought, of course you can't wear a military uniform when doing other things, so just wrap it up and leave it alone for now. If someone asks about the clothes in the future, you can naturally ask for money. If no one asks about the clothes, the military uniforms can also be transformed into civilian clothes. After wrapping the clothes, he went to find the craftsmen who had come with him. Those people have found trouble recently, ever since the plane from Nanjing landed in Taiyuan and dropped its bombs. The mansions of various dignitaries rushed to dig holes in the ground and were given a shangxi ticket a day. Tai Suo found them and followed them to a Zhou mansion to dig a hole in the ground, and stayed at the guild hall at night. One night he walked out of the street after work and saw that there were no people on the street. There were also soldiers and civilians, especially those with unusual clothes and voices in Taiyuan, and sentries were posted on the streets, as if something had happened. Back at the clubhouse was packed with people and the door to the detention area was opened. Chuanxi and the group who went to Peiping a few days ago all lived there. There were people on the bed and underground, and his luggage was piled in a corner for him. As soon as Chuanxi saw Tai Suo, he said to him, "You live here? You can find a place to live today. There are too many of us." Tai Suo looked at the situation and said it was unreasonable, so he had to move his luggage. Chuanxi asked him again, "Which house does Ji Tang live in?" Tai Suo said, "He went down to Hunan." Tai Suo also wanted to know why he came back, so he asked by the way, "Why are you all back?" Chuanxi said, "You are all back. Commander Yan is also back." After hearing this, Tai Suo still didn't understand why they came back, but he had no intention of coming back, so he moved his luggage and still went to look for him. Of peers. There were many people traveling with him. In addition to those who came with him, there were dozens of new acquaintances with them, all living in a street called Manshaufen, outside the new south gate of Taiyuan. The houses in this area are all small squares, which look like boxes from a distance. They are also filled with land, which is soaked by rain. Some have kangs, and some have grass laid on the spot. The rent is not expensive, only 50 cents per person per month, regardless of room or room. The place where Tai Suo moved was a long courtyard with 4 houses in a row. The one to the east was a one-room house where 2 students lived, and the remaining 3 houses were all 3-room houses. It was they, the craftsmen, who lived there. When he moved there, he happened to meet these craftsmen having dinner. Each of these people was holding a bowl of millet and rice, and they were surrounding a young student who was obedient. This student, about 20 years old, was wearing a red vest. He was wearing a blue uniform, 2 thick red arms, thick hair, and his eyes seemed to be flickering, sometimes looking this way and sometimes that way. The people around him kept asking him questions, and he answered them one by one. From his words, I knew that the Shangxi army was defeated. Yan Xishan and Wang Jingwei both ran back to Taiyuan. Someone asked, "The 2 families are competing for the world. Why did the plane from Nanjing go to Taiyuan and blow up the rickshaw puller and the clay cellar?" Some asked, "We worked hard to earn some Shangxi tickets, but now the tickets are worthless. Who should we go to?" The student said, "So, no matter who wins or loses in this kind of war, we must oppose it, because they ignore the interests of the people in every aspect." Tai Suo listened for a while, and although he didn't understand everything, I think this person spoke fairly. He put his luggage away, went outside to buy something, ate something. When he came back, he lay on the bunk and asked a colleague, "Where did the man who talked during the meal come from?" The colleague said, "He is also from our yard. The tenant, who goes to Sanjin High School, has a surname of Chang. I don't know what it's called either. His classmates called him Xiao Chang, and everyone also called him Mr. Xiaochang, and he didn't care. This man is so good. He is very friendly to us people, he is not arrogant at all, he is very sincere in his reasoning, and his reasoning is different from other gentlemen. Tai Suo has been confused about a lot of things recently. He wanted to ask a literate gentleman to ask, but these confused things tend to happen to those literate people, so he had no choice but to keep silent. Now I see him and say that this Mr. Xiaochang is such a good person. I wanted to learn from him, so I asked this colleague, if one of us goes to ask him something, will he answer or not? The colleague said, okay. This man is very easy to talk to. As long as you don't fall asleep, you can talk. Even until midnight. Tai Suo said, that's fine. It's just that I'm not used to people. The colleague said, it doesn't matter, he doesn't care about this. If you want to go, I can take you there. Tai Suo said, okay. We'll go right now. After saying that, the two of them went to the small master's room to see Xiaochang. They entered the small master's room. Seeing Xiaochang having lit the lamp and sitting at the table, he also had a classmate sleeping on the kong. The craftsman then introduced to Xiaochang, Mr. Xiaochang. I, a fellow countryman, have something to ask you, is it okay? Xiaochang glanced at the two of them. Then he looked at Tai Suo and said, okay. Sit down. Tai Suo sat opposite him. Seeing that Xiaochang was very beautiful and capable, Tai Suo felt that he was not worthy to talk to others, and he didn't know where to start. Xiaochun saw that he was very restrained, so he said to him, we live in the same place. Just like a family, we can talk about anything we want. I'm not sure about some things, Tai Suo said, and I'd like to get some advice. However, since I've been away from my mother since I was little, I've been talking about it for a long time. Xiaochang said, it doesn't matter. We live together, we can't finish today and there will be tomorrow. It doesn't matter when it's time, it's where it comes from. Tai Suo thought for a while and said, let's start from the beginning. He first introduced where he was from, how he went bankrupt at home, how he came to Taiyuan, what he passed through when he arrived in Taiyuan, and what he saw. He kept talking until he moved out of the club that night. He finished telling his story, and then asked Xiaochang, there are some things I don't understand. How can Lijiazhuang never fall? How can the third master still be an official if he does such nonsense and is not punished? How do those people from Xiaoxi Chuanxi always have enough to eat? If someone else is beheaded for selling food, why does it matter to Master Wu's mansion? Why is the bandit leader here but no one catches him and he still needs to be treated like a first-class guest? How can the division commander recruit bandits? He hasn't finished asking yet. Xiaochang walked up to him with a smile, patted him on the shoulder and said, friend. You have really seen through them. The world is like this today, it is not strange at all. Tai Suo said, don't the people above not be reasonable? Xiaochang said, yes, yes. How could they dare to be so unreasonable without someone from above making the decision for them? Tai Suo said, if the world is like this, what hope do serious old suffering people like us have in living? Xiaochang said, of course we can't let it be like this forever. This group of unreasonable guys who fight for power must be defeated together, and we, the upright people, can take charge of the country, so that the world can have truth. Tai Suo said, who can defeat him? Xiaochang said, as long as everyone works together. They are still a minority of people who are unreasonable. Tai Suo said, how come everyone is united? Xiaochang said, there is a way. It's too late today, I'll tell you in detail tomorrow. As soon as Tai Sua heard that it was getting late, everyone in the courtyard fell asleep quietly. The colleague who came with him also went back to sleep at some time, so he left Lijiazhuang and went back to his room to sleep. Even though Tai Sua lay down when he went back that night, he slept very late. He felt that Lijiazhuang was a strange person. All the people he had ever seen who had studied were indifferent to people like him. It's always the same as when a shopkeeper talks to a clerk. Every word he speaks is a lesson. The good part is praise, the bad part is blame. I have never seen anyone consider me a friend. Lijiazhuang is the first person to treat him as a friend. As for what Lijiazhuang said, he also fully understood, and he also felt that it would not be the world if we did not overthrow these unreasonable people and replace them with a group of reasonable people. However, he still couldn't figure out how to overthrow them, so he had to wait until the next day to ask Lijiazhuang. This night was his most satisfying day in recent years. He felt that if there was a person like Lijiazhuang in the world, it would still be a world. The next day, while working and thinking about Lijiazhuang, he managed to stay up until dark. He put down the guy from the hole and got out. He didn't even bother to stop on the street and ran back to the Manchu tomb. Before arriving at his own house, he first went to Xiao Dongfang to find Lijiazhuang. As soon as he entered, he didn't see Lijiazhuang. He only saw boxes and boxes of books scattered on the floor. Lijiazhuang's classmates were stacking his own luggage in the room. He went in and asked, "Mr. Lijiazhuang hasn't come back yet?" Lijiazhuang's classmate said, "Lijiazhuang asked the security headquarters to arrest him." After hearing this, he stared wide-eyed in confusion. He was stunned for a while and asked again, "Why?" Lijiazhuang's classmate looked up at him and replied vaguely, "Who knows what it is?" As he said that, he moved his luggage out. Tai Sua didn't want to ask any more questions. He followed outside and saw him calling a foreign truck to pull him up and leave. At this time, Tai Sua's colleagues also came back from the street one after another. Tai Sua reported the news, and everyone rushed to the small master's room to see it. The tables and benches were still standing there quietly, there were a few scraps of paper on the ground, and no one was there. Everyone didn't know why, and they all felt strange. An old carpenter who often lives in Taiyuan said, "I'm afraid it's the Communist Party." There have been many Communist Party arrests in recent years, and many have been killed. What a pity. They are all capable young men in their 20s. Tai Sua asked, "Who is the Communist Party?" The old carpenter said, "We don't know. I heard that they are always at odds with today's officials and don't approve of those big bosses." A few other people said randomly, "I'm afraid." Lijiazhuang told them that it was two different things, and Lijiazhuang told them the truth. Everyone studied for a long time, and finally said, "Oh, what a pity that Lijiazhuang is." Many people are worried about Lijiazhuang. It is still as many as yesterday, and the dry rice maid is left half a pot. The iron lock ate half a bowl of rice and could no longer eat it. Only then did he feel that the world was often the first good person, but only after knowing it for a day, he was gone. He heard the old carpenter say what the Communist Party has, and he heard that these people have been killed a lot. He thought, since a lot of being killed, it can be seen that this kind of person is not only small. Is there a lot of people who have not been killed? Think again. Now that he has been killed a lot, will Xiao often be killed? If you are so young, capable, and honest, you are happy to speak happily last night. Today, he will be caught and killed by others, huh? He thought about it, crying in his eyes. That night, he didn't sleep all night, so he asked the old carpenter again, but the old carpenter didn't know anything more. From that night on, he felt that living in this kind of world was really boring. Although he still dug holes for others every day, he had no energy to do anything else. Sometimes I think that I should go home, and sometimes I think that going back is not the same. Chapter 5. Just like this, an autumn passed. Planes keep coming, and there are many homes digging holes in the ground, but Shaanxi bills are becoming less and less valuable. Tai Suo and his group didn't have much energy, so they all left slowly. Later, Yan Xishan went out to Dalian. Su Yongchang became the commander of the security to maintain order. Planes from Nanjing stopped coming, and work on the underground tunnels of major mansions was also stopped. When people stop working, Tai Suo and the 2 or 3 companions who had not left had nothing to do, so they had to make a plan to go home. That day, Tai Suo and his 2 fellow travelers were discussing how to go home. I heard that it was difficult to move on the road, so Pang Bingshuan's troops were stationed in Qin County, and Sun Dianying's troops were stationed in Jincheng. There were some stragglers everywhere, saying they were checking the road, but when they found the money, they took it away. Each of them earned more than 100 yuan in Shaanxi tickets. Although 1 yuan is only worth 50 cents, even 50 yuan is still a lot of money for a craftsman. Naturally, I couldn't bear to lose it. Fortunately, they were all carpenters, and they came up with a good way to hide money, which was to hollow out the long plane used for jointing, stuff the bills in, and then nail the jujube wood base board. They were preparing to set off the next day, so they hid the tickets like this for the first time. Early the next morning, the 3 people packed their bags and hit the road. When he walked to the gate of Xinnan, Tai Suo remembered that his pair of shoes were still lost in the clubhouse. They were still half new and it would be a pity to lose them. So he discussed with 2 colleagues and asked him to wait while he ran back to get them. These 2 colleagues. I looked at his luggage and waited for almost 1 hour, but he still didn't come. A car drove out, and the 2 of them moved his luggage aside for him. After waiting for a while, he and another person followed. As they walked, they said to them, "Are you in a hurry?" What bad luck! I couldn't find any shoes, so I got another call. 2 people asked him what happened, and he said, Chuanxi went to Datong to pick up her luggage and came back. She and many people took advantage of the Secretary General's car to send relatives back, and asked me to help them move boxes to the car. A colleague also recognized Chuanxi and asked him, "What is he doing in Datong? What boxes are there?" Tai Suo said, "I heard it's at some taxation bureau. These people will make a fortune, and 3 or 4 boxes will be very heavy." The colleague joked to him, "You and he are from the same village. Can't you ask his car to pick you up?" Tai Suo said, "It won't be our turn in 100 years. Pointing to the person who came with him, he said, "A gentleman like this, who runs around in their mansion all day long, can't even squeeze in." 2 of his companions looked at the man who came with him. He has a long neck, wears a black robe, a gray coat, a top hat, and carries a green velvet suitcase. This person was the duck-necked man who was in the 5th master's mansion that day. When he saw Tai Suo saying that he couldn't squeeze in, he thought it was dishonorable, so he explained, "We can't squeeze in because there are too many people. It's the same thing to take a break on the road, but walk slower." He specifically stated that he could ask for a job to maintain his identity. Tai Suo had lived in Taiyuan for several months and had learned some sophistication, so he said to Yining, "Sir, we also want to get a hold of you. I heard the road is not easy to walk on. It doesn't matter if I follow you all the way, right?" Yaning said, there are acquaintances in Shaanxi's government agencies and troops, so it's natural to meet them. But if you meet the guest troops from other provinces, it will be difficult to talk. I'm afraid I can only take care of myself. Said and forced a smile. They followed each other on the road. After walking not far, there was a corvée bureau. Yijing asked for a donkey to ride on, and the three of them followed behind with their luggage. The duck neck needs a short change. It needs to be changed every 10 miles or 8 miles. It takes 4 or 5 days to reach the watershed. Although I met a few road checkers along the way, I was really polite when I saw the duck neck. I just looked at my passport and let him pass. The three of them said they were traveling with duck neck and they were not inspected at all. After crossing the watershed, I once again encountered 2 road-checking soldiers. Although they were also from Shaanxi, the situation was a little different from the previous times. They shook out the luggage of the three of them and went through every piece of clothing. Fortunately, their money was well hidden and was not found. Tai Suo was surprised when he inspected Tai Suo's military uniform. But they didn't pursue it. Later, I opened the duck-neck suitcase and checked out the 20 yuan in cash. After this time, they found that the duck's neck was not a problem, so they walked with him to waste time. They wanted to go forward, but were embarrassed. I had no choice but to still walk with him. As they approached a village called Suadian, they met a road checker again, pointing his finger from a distance and shouting, "Stop!" The 4 of them were startled again. When he stopped and took a look, the one shouting, "Stop!" was Shaoxi. There were 2 others in military uniforms a little further away. Shaoxi looked at the duck's neck and said with a smile, "It's you." Then he said to Tai Suo, "Are you going back too?" Tai Suo agreed. Shaoxi turned back to the 2 men in military uniforms and said, "We are on our own. People." He said to Duck Neck again, "It's getting dark, let's live together." Duck Neck said, "Where can we live?" Shaoxi said, "Let's live in Suadian." He then said to the 2 men in military uniforms, "There's no one on the road anymore, take it. Let's leave our luggage too." After saying that, he and the 2 men ran behind a big rock, and each of them carried a big baggage. The 7 of them followed each other to Chui's store, and it was already dark. Shaoxi walked in front and found the door of a store, asked to open the door, and gave an order to the shopkeeper, "Find a clean house." The shopkeeper looked at him, he couldn't afford to offend him. Then he looked at Tai Suo and the 3 of them and said, "Are you all in the same boat?" Tai Suo said, "The 3 of us are craftsmen." The shopkeeper lit a lamp and led Shaoxi and the 4 of them to the main room. Then he led Tai Suo and the 3 of them to another house. The 4 of them were shouting and screaming, wanting to eat this and that. Chui's shop was a small place, and the shopkeeper couldn't come to socialize for a while, so he got scolded a lot. Finally, he found some eggs and made them scrambled egg ramen. After sending them to eat, Tai Suo and the 3 of them sat in the pot to cook rice. After driving the 3 of them to finish their meal, it was already midnight. The house the 3 of them lived in was not far from the main house. After sleeping, they could hear the conversations in the main house. They heard Yaning tell how he lost 20 yuan today. Shaoxi said, "It doesn't matter, you can just get some flowers tomorrow." Yaning said, "It doesn't matter, I don't care how much I can bring. I heard that Qin County the investigation is very tight in Jincheng area." Shaoxi said, "I want to go back too. If you follow me tomorrow, no one will investigate." When one of Tai Suo's colleagues heard this, he quietly said to Tai Sua, "Listen. Xiao Shi will also go back tomorrow. Let's follow him tomorrow. On top, maybe better than the duck-neck one, because of the military uniform he wore. Besides, he is in that line of work." Tai Sua also whispered, "Follow him and deal with the group checking the road, but I really don't want to see them." The colleague said, "Let's go with him, it's not like we're getting married to him." When Tai Sua thought about it, he became a little worldly again. He thought, it's not as uncomfortable as having a duck's neck today, but in the end we still followed each other, so it would be better to be more easygoing. Besides, he had given Xiao Shi a pawn. After a month of hard work, that's all. He wouldn't refuse to say it. Thinking about it this way, he felt that it was absolutely necessary. The next morning, Tai Sua and the three of them got up early. They cooked and ate the meal first, and then the four in the main room got up to wash their faces. After a while, I heard them arguing. Xiaoxi said, "It's a blessing for everyone, but you can't get away with it, so give me all the Shangxi tickets." Another person with a Hunan accent said, "This doesn't make you suffer. I just think you are from Shangxi, so take it. Shangxi bills can always turn into money. What's the point of asking me to take him back to Hunan and have you? If all these clothes belong to you, aren't they worth a few $100s?" Xiao Shi said, "We have been together for a few months and traveled hundreds of miles. There is nothing wrong with our surnamed friend, right? Now you have brought more than 2,000 yuan in cash, dozens of gold rings, a bunch of shabby Shangxi tickets and a few bags of tattered clothes to pay for me. Do you think you are right or not? Everyone enjoys the blessings and takes responsibility for the disasters. Aren't my surnames Li risking my life just like you?" Another Hunan accent said, "Old Li. Stop talking. We are all friends since we came on stage. It is better to break up than to get along. Take any of these rings you want. Shangxi tickets want you to be caught by Chu. Come. Get another 200 cash." Just as he said that, the shopkeeper brought the fried and steamed buns. The few people stopped arguing and started eating. After finishing the meal, the two men in military uniforms carried 2 heavy bags of things, said goodbye to Xiao Shi and Yanning very politely, and left. The two of them didn't have to go far to see each other off. They nodded at the door of the main room and then went back to pack their luggage. At this time, 2 of Tai Sua's colleagues urged Tai Sua to negotiate with Xiao Shi, and Tai Sua went. As soon as he entered the main room, he saw a large pile of Shangxi bills piled on the Kong, 2 packages of cash, a handful of gold rings, and 2 or 3 large packages of clothes. Xiao Shi was folding clothes there. When he saw him go in, he said to him, "You haven't left yet?" Duck Neck also asked the same question, and Tai Sua agreed one by one, so he said to him, "I heard that the road is very difficult to walk on. I want to catch up with you, is that okay?" Xiao Shi was in high spirits and replied with a smile, "Okay. Follow me." Nothing. Tai Sua saw that he had agreed and had nothing more to say to him. He stood there and watched him folding clothes. Seeing that Tai Sua was idle, he pointed at the clothes and said, "Please sort them out for me. Organize and wrap up." Tai Sua regretted not going out right away, so he had to tidy up for him. Duck Neck asked Xiao Shi, "Did you know him before?" Xiao Shi said, "This is my orderly. I am from the same village. He has already pushed his clothes to the iron lock for sorting." Then he went to sort out the money on the Kong. He sorted the bills into stacks, picked up a stack, and held about 100 or 200 yuan. He handed it to Yining and said, "Didn't you lose the money yesterday? Spend it." Yining was still humble, and Xiao Ning said happily, "Here you go. These troubled years. If you catch it, just spend it." As he said this, he stuffed the money into Yining's arms, and Yining accepted it. Xiao Shi turned back to Tai Suo and said, "Do you still have your military uniform?" Tai Suo just thought he was asking for the clothes and replied, "Yes. I'll get it for you in a minute. But the chief of staff never paid me any salary." Xiao Shi said, "I don't want it from you. If you put it on, you can still be regarded as my orderly, so you can move more easily on the road. You don't need to pick up your luggage. If you go to the coffer bureau, the messenger will bring it to you." Tai Suo said, "I'm still following 2 people. Xiao Shi said, "It doesn't matter. Just say that they are all brought by me." After a while, all the luggage was packed. Tai Suo came out to explain to his 2 colleagues, and then put the single military uniform over the cotton coat. Tai Suo carried the baggage for Xiao Shi. The 5 of them followed each other out of the shop and went to the corvée bureau. Xiao Shi said to the errand officer in a southern accent, "2 animals and 3 people's welfare." The errand officer looked out the window and said, "Why do carpenters have to be poor?" Xiao Shi said, "What a damn bumpkin. The army doesn't do it, carpenter." Tai Suo's 2 colleagues said outside the window, "Let's pick it ourselves." Xiao Shi glanced at them out of the window and said, "You just pick it up yourself." He then said to the errand officer, "Then 2 animals and 1 citizen will go to Mulberry." The errand officer allocated the errand. Xiaoxi and Ye got on the donkey's neck, and the donkey driver and Tai Suo followed. Jiao Qi Qi Yi hold Yo Shui Po Chao forgive dash. Xiao Shi's burden is heavy. The people dare to divide the eunuchs. I'll correct the bed. Tired of carrying the burden? I'll bear it for you for a while. What a good boss. I dare not ask you to bear it. Tai Suo said, "What are you afraid of? I can take it." As he said that, he went to pick up the burden. The People's Guard Huanyao went down to Kong Na Lei Pai Xiang and blew it up. "Don't dare. I'll bear it for him for a while." As he said that, he took the burden and put it on his shoulders. Mingan Jussi collapsed. "Oh. What a great boss. There are so few people as good as your boss." The donkey driver also said, "How few? Are there those people who can help you? It's good enough without fighting." While he was talking, there was another road checker in front of him. A soldier was searching the baggage of 2 businessmen. When he saw Xiaoxi and the others approaching, he said to the 2 businessmen, "Pack it up," and they all ran away. Xiaoxi could see clearly on the donkey, so she shouted deliberately, "Stop." "Which part?" The soldier was so frightened that he quickened his pace and ran away without looking back. Mingan said, "You didn't take anything, right?" The businessman said, "No," and nodded to Xiao Shi and said, "Thank you, boss. I won't be ruined if I meet you." Xiao Shi was in the donkey. Shang shook his head and said, "Nothing." "Damn, you are so bold." "In broad daylight, we will intercept the road and rob people." The donkey driver just thought that Xiao Shi didn't know about this situation, so he took a few steps with the load and said to him, "Good boss, this is not uncommon. I don't know how many times this kind of thing happens on this road in a day." Tai Suo was behind him but didn't dare to laugh even if he wanted to. He thought to himself, "You still want to tell him? Those burdens you carried for him were not obtained by searching the road like that. Since Tai Sua put on the military uniform again, he felt that he was unlucky again, carrying water and food along the way, asking for directions and changing jobs. It's all their own business again. Xiaoxi and Duck Neck ride on the animals and take charge of the command. Although he felt regretful, he couldn't think of a way out, so he had no choice but to keep going. After passing Qin County, the road became flat and the donkeys were replaced by mule carts, making walking much more enjoyable than before. On the day we passed Tunlia City, it snowed once and there was mud and water, making it difficult for cars to drive. Once, when we were crossing a ditch, the mule couldn't pull it across and stopped. The driver asked them to get out of the car. Xiaoxi and Yanning were about to walk in the mud when they saw it, but they didn't want to, so they forced him to drive. He whipped the mule twice. The mule jumped a bit, but the wheel was deeply sunk and could not be pulled. Xiaoxi said, "What are you guys doing? You can't even drive an animal," the driver complained. "Boss, I really can't make it in time," Xiaoxi shouted. "If you are naughty, I will beat you." He ordered Tai Sua again, "Hit him." Tai Sua had never beaten anyone before, and seeing that the driver was not a naughty person, he did not beat him, but instead helped him push the cart. "But it can't be pushed." The driver still begged him and the two of them to get out of the car. Xiaoxi took out the whip and hit him with the whip stick at the ear door. The driver touched his ear with his hand, and struck him on the hand a second time. His hands were also broken, his ears were broken, and tears were streaming down his face. He wiped the tears with his hands and wiped blood all over his face. Tai Sua and his two colleagues saw this situation. Very sad, but there is no way to save it. People were beaten, but the car still couldn't move. In the end, the driver carried Xiaoxi with a duck's neck and an iron lock on his back, and then came back to catch the empty car. Staying in Baojin town that night, Tai Sua whispered to his two colleagues, "Let's not go with him tomorrow. We really can't stand those things." His two colleagues also agreed very much and said, "Even if the bandits rob us, we won't go with him anymore." After eating after dinner, Tai Sua told Xiaoxi that the three of them were going back via the mountain road. Xiaoxi said to Yanning, "If that's the case, you can also wear a military uniform tomorrow." Then she said to Tai Sua, "That's okay, just take off your military uniform and give it to him." Tai Sua just asked for this. "It would be nice if we could break up." So I took off my single military uniform that I had exchanged for a month and gave it to them, and they broke up the next day. Chuanxi took the car all the way home. Xiaoxi was sent home on official mission. Locked up. After a few days, I also reached my home on the mountain road. Although I encountered a road checker once, the money was well hidden and was not lost. The price of Shaanxi bills is getting lower and lower, and the price is only 20 cents. Xiaoxi's Shaanxi tickets were sold to the Jincheng army and turned into dirt. Tai Sua didn't know how to do this and watched the tickets fall. There is nothing you can do in a hurry. After a long delay, I heard that Yan Shishan had returned to Taiyuan to be the director of appeasement, and the ticket price had risen to 25 cents. At this time, it is the time when the people are in trouble. Collecting debts is also a Shaanxi ticket, and selling goods is also a Shaanxi ticket. At this time, it would have been easy to sell the 100 yuan Shaanxi ticket that was locked up. However, when he saw Wang Anfu taking the money, he thought the money would go up, so he couldn't bear to push it out. He only took out a dozen yuan to buy some odds and ends for the new year in Fushancheng. Unexpectedly, after the new year, official business came down, and Shaanxi bills were worth 20 yuan to 1 yuan. Wang Anfu was naturally very unlucky. Tai Suo was even dumbfounded, and half a year's efforts were in vain. Later, Tai Suo's notes were all dispersed once he made a grain loan. This loan of grain and fodder is an apportionment that has never been done before. There will be no more war. The troops from other provinces were stationed in Shaanxi and had to eat. Yan Xishan would collect grain loans from them every 2 months, charging 7.5 yuan for each tael of grain each time. Tai Suo is an outsider, and the land bought by the outsider is of course very rich in food and money, although there is only 5 acres of sandy land left. What he received was grain from the land, and the amount of silver was 5 cents, 7 cents, and 6 cents. Each time he borrowed grain, he should have paid 4 yuan and 32 cents in foreign currency. When combined with Shaanxi bills, he would get 86 yuan and 4 cents. Since the grain loan was sent out, not only Tai Suo could not afford it, except for a few wealthy people such as Lijiazhuang almost can't afford it. Xiao Mao is the head of the village, but he ran away because he couldn't collect the money after it was due. There were constant stragglers coming to the village looking for the village head, but no one wanted to be the village head. After some manipulation by local households, Tai Suo was chosen as the village head. After Tai Suo put on this sad hat, he couldn't care less about it. The craftsmen didn't care, and were busy collecting payments from people all day and night. At this time, Yan Xishan was sent to the official position, and he was also sold by the village chief in the countryside. Smokers like Li Ruzhen can buy private land from Shaoxi, only bankrupt smokers. The craftsmen didn't care, and were busy collecting payments from people all day and night. At this time, Yan Xishan was sent to the official position, and he was also sold by the village chief in the countryside. Smokers like Li Ruzhen can buy private land from Shaoxi, only bankrupt smokers can do it. They only bought 1.5 cents each time, but Shaoxi didn't want to support it, so she asked the mayor to buy official land. According to the custom at that time, cash money was required to buy official land, but this was possible in other villages. These outsiders were locked up, and they were afraid of offending anyone who did not give credit to them. They only bought 1.5 cents each time, but Shaoxi didn't want to support it, so she asked the mayor to buy official land. According to the custom at that time, cash money was required to buy official land, but this was possible in other villages. These outsiders were locked up, and they were afraid of offending anyone who did not give credit to them. It was also difficult to collect debts if they were given on credit. Therefore, in addition to collecting grain and fodder and borrowing money, they also had to collect official land accounts. It was not easy to collect the loan, it was not easy to collect the land debt, and there was no way to pay for the money. When the loan from the superiors was in short supply, I paid the loan with the money from selling the official land. The money from the official land was in short supply. He also used the collected loans to pay for the official money. Neither of the two kinds of money were readily available, so no matter what the superior wanted, he had to go to Fushanchang to borrow a few yuan to pay it. After almost a year of this, the guest army left and the place became a little calmer again. When Xiao Mao saw that he could become the victor again, he discussed with Li Ruzhen and changed Tai Suo's vicar to Xiao Mao. Tai Suo told the mayor that he owed Fu Shunchang more than 40 yuan in loans, and some of it was on himself and some on the smokers. The amount was about the same, but there was no cash, so Yang Sankue and the old man Xiao Fu were asked to discuss it with Wang Anfu, the shopkeeper of Fu Shunchang, and wrote a document to them. Guantu is also called smoking cessation medicine cake. But that's just what officials call it, and common people call it official soil. Chapter 6. After Tai Suo became the head of the village, his life became worse than before. Within 3 or 4 years, his family had no food for the night, and his clothes were replenished, so he spent the winter in single clothes. Although he is a craftsman, he can afford to use the craftsman's house, but they are afraid that he, a poor man, will take advantage of him and refuse to use him. Therefore, he can't find anything all day long, so he has to ask for 3 pieces here, borrow half a liter there, and make a meal. Dayton. In the 24th year of the Republic of China. I really couldn't survive at home, so I asked my 8-year-old little fat boy to help herd cattle, and I and a few of my colleagues went to a place farther away from home for activities, but this time, because we didn't have the money, we couldn't. Then go to Taiyuan. I followed a few colleagues to the county town. I found a boss in the city. He was the fat man who ate watermelon at Wuya's mansion and talked about returning to work. This man's surname was Wei, and he had been working as a purchaser at Yan Shishan's no-smoking assessment office in the past few years. He made a fortune by buying land in Suiyuan and became one of the top gentlemen in the county. He wanted to build a mansion in the city, so he needed craftsmen. Tai Sua and a few people who went with him negotiated the price with the contractor and went to work. The Smoking-Free Assessment Office is the general agency responsible for selling official land. In the first half of the year, Tai Sua's family had a better time. After the autumn harvest in the second half of the year, although there were not many grains left after paying interest to Fu Shunchang, Tai Sua and the little fat boy were not at home, and Erniu was the only one. People don't eat much at home. Unfortunately, something unexpected happened within a few days. The higher-ups came down from official business and said that the communist troops had crossed the river from Shaanxi. They asked all localities to step up their efforts to prevent communism. They would rather kill 1,000 people by mistake than let go of a single communist. The county magistrate took up the official business. Like crazy, they spread anti-communist security groups and police everywhere to catch people. Anyone with 1 or 2 copper coins, 1 or 2 threads, a small mirror or other unusual objects on their body was said to be a code word of the Communist Party, and those who were fleeing famine and selling ginger the burden of the salesman. Of all the foreigners, we might catch and kill as many as we could in a day, and one day we killed 100, 50, or 60. The police used flashlights to check the place where the craftsmen lived several times every night. They also killed 2 craftsmen because they searched for copper coins on their bodies. At this time, although the craftsmen were all afraid of being caught, Fatty's boss had heard that the Communist Party was coming to kill those who had bullied others, so they had no intention of building it. Besides, the weather was getting colder and the muddy water was almost freezing. In this way, several people took advantage of it, and the work stopped. Tai Sua and many craftsmen dispersed and went home. Back in the village office was also busy with anti-communist affairs. Chuanxi became the village leader of the Justice Corps, and Xiaoxi became the village leader of the Anti-Communist Security Corps. All able-bodied men were required to be corps members and were trained by Xiaoxi. Tai Sua will have to go to training immediately after he returns. The Justice Group was originally an anti-communist group organized by Yan Shishan. This winter, Shaanxi's army was very busy with mobilization. The Central Army also came to Shaanxi to help prevent communism, and there were often military visits in the area. After the chaos of the 19th year of the Republic of China, the people were naturally worried when they saw the war. Yang Sankui's daughter Qiao Qiao was originally promised to Erniu's brother Baigo. This was Yang Sankui's youngest daughter. She was already 18 years old at this time. Yang Sankui was worried and chased old man Xiu Fu to marry Baigo. Firstly, The old man Xiufu felt that his grandson and Baigo were 19 years old and it was time to get married. Secondly, since his family was not big and everything could be simpler during these turbulent years, he immediately agreed. On the 30th day of the 12th lunar month of this year, I married White Dog. Although the life of the old man Xiufu was not very good and he was an outsider, he still had many friends because of his integrity. Everyone also knows that he cannot afford to spend money, and he himself is from a small family who can survive. So we gathered together and bought some ready-made dragon and phoenix wedding couplets to give him as a gift. It is the custom in this place that anyone who gives such couplets is to treat guests with wine but no food. 1 wine is for 100 guests. After the incident, the old man Xiufu prepared some wine. We treat guests on the 3rd day of the 1st lunar month just after the lunar year. That night, Tai Suo also greeted the guests at old man Xiufu's house. After the excitement, the ordinary guests dispersed. Only the closer neighbors like Lijiazhuang and the folks from Lin County were left. Since they had just celebrated the new year and had nothing to do, they still gathered around the wine table, drinking the remaining jug of wine and chatting. They talked back and forth. Talking about preventing communism, Lijiazhuang said to Tai Suo, "Xiaoxi tells us all day long that the communists kill people like mowing grass, but no one has really seen it. You have boarded the big dock and walked through Taiyuan, have you seen it?" This question. Here comes the words that aroused Tai Suo. Since Tai Suo came back from Taiyuan that year, until now, because one is busy and the other is poor, Tai Suo has never had a heart-to-heart talk with anyone. It's not that he didn't have anything on his mind, he just didn't talk about it. Ever since he met Xiaochang, he has not forgotten a day in the past 4 or 5 years. He always thinks that Xiaochang is the best good person in the world. Whenever he encounters something that he can't bear to see, he thinks of what Xiaochang said to him: "We must get rid of this group of unreasonable guys who are relying on their power. Knock down. Only when we, the upright people, come to take charge can the world have the truth." Back then, he heard the old carpenter say that Xiaochang was a communist. He also heard that Yan Xishan had been killing communists since the 16th year of the Republic of China. He thought that the communists were people like Xiaochang. It's a pity that I never heard anyone mention it again. It wasn't until now, 5 or 6 years later, that I heard this name again. When he first heard in the city that the Communist Party had crossed the river, he was very happy, thinking that this time he could defeat all the bad guys who bullied others. Later, when he saw so many people were killed in the county and the army was so busy mobilizing, he thought that it would not be easy to defeat these bad guys, because they had power and the power of the government to back them up. However, his thoughts at this time were different from those 5 or 6 years ago. 5 or 6 years ago, he thought that there were only a few people like Xiaochang and could not achieve anything. Then he heard that the Communist Party could cross the Yellow River and occupy several places. The county, seeing those bad guys again, was very panicked. He thought that this force was getting big. Even if it could not defeat the government forces for a while, it would definitely become bigger in a few years, because he still remembered Xiaochang saying, "As long as everyone works together, these bad guys will still be in the minority." He remembered that Xiaochang also said, "There is a way to get everyone to work together." Unfortunately, before he could tell himself about the way, he asked others to arrest him. He thought that the people who were fighting across the river now must know this method, and they would wait until they reach our place. I will definitely tell everyone about this method. Since he had such a set of ideas, in this winter, although he was still living a poor life, he was very happy in his heart. No matter how bad the Communist Party was said by Xiao Shi, Chun Shi and others, he only laughed secretly. I secretly thought in my heart, the Communist Party is going to kill you guys when it comes. How many more days can you continue to be a hegemon? These are just what Tai Suo feels in his heart and have never been said to others. When Leng Yuan asked him that night, he was holding back a lot of words and had nothing to say. It was just the Chinese New Year, and they were all among themselves. They had drank a few more glasses of wine just now, so they became more interested in talking. He said, "I've seen one, but it's a long story, don't you guys listen?" Everyone called Xiao Shichuan Shishuan for several months. I had never seen a Communist Party member, so naturally they were all willing to listen, and they all said, "Go ahead. There's nothing going on tomorrow anyway, so what's the big deal if you go to sleep late?" Tai Suo squatted on the chair and poured himself a drink. After a glass of wine, I raised my waist and head. Let's talk about his time in Taiyuan. Tai Suo had lived for 27 years, and he had never been as happy as he was that night, and what he said was simply interesting. Although the listeners had heard many speeches by gentlemen, they all thought that no one was as good as Tai Suo. He told the stories about the civil and military officials he met in Taiyuan, such as the Chief of Staff, Xiao Shi, Hunan Guest, Sharp-billed Monkey, Duck Neck, Flat-Eye Socket, Fat Man, Zhu Zhu, etc., just like telling storytelling, branch by branch. A detailed one, when it comes to meeting Xiao Chang in the Manchurian tomb. He talked about Xiao Chang and what he said in more detail, so that the listeners felt as if they had met Xiao Chang. When he talked about Xiao Chang being captured, he himself shed tears, and everyone who listened also felt like they had met Xiao Chang. Shed tears. Finally he said, "I heard an old carpenter say that Xiao Chang is a communist." After he finished speaking, everyone who listened was very satisfied. Everyone has been listening to Xiao Shi saying that the Communist Party kills people on sight and burns houses on sight. We have long been a little disbelieving, thinking it is too unreasonable. He thought there was no such person in the world who wanted to kill people, but now hearing Tai Suo say this further proved that Xiao Shi and the others were spreading rumors. Leng Yuan asked again, "So, the Communist Party is doing good things. Why do you still want to prevent communism? You didn't wait for the iron lock to open." Someone answered on his behalf, "Don't you care who are the people who are responsible for preventing communism? Like the chiefs of staff mentioned by Tai Suo, the third master and the fifth master, the group from the fifth master's mansion, and like those who set up Badong, the sixth master of 10, the head of our village, Happy Spring. Naturally, they want to guard against the communists, because if the communists don't come, their world will be theirs, and if they come, they will no longer be able to show off their power. How can they not oppose it?" Leng Yuandao, "So, when we serve as the anti-communist security group, we act as watchdogs for others, right?" Everyone laughed and said, "Of course it is." When the conversation came to this point, it was already late at night, and everyone dispersed. These few people who listened to Tai Suo's conversation all thought that the communists were good people. Although they were too careful, no one dared to say it publicly. The benefits of the Communist Party. But who doesn't have a close friend? He spreads the word to others, and within a few days, all the good people in the village know that Xiaoxi Chunks' training is a lie. Fortunately, no one told Xiaoxi Chuanxi and those people, so they didn't know these words. I just feel that the members of the anti-communist group are getting more and more relaxed. The Communist Party specializes in attacking bad guys like Xiao Shi and others, and does not kill ordinary people. This news became more and more widespread. As it spread for a long time, Shaoxi and Chuanxi and the others got wind of it and actually asked about it. Everyone heard the rumors and no one knew where they came from. It's a pity that trouble still happened later, and it was Leng Yuan who was the reckless one who let it slip. It turns out that Yang Sankui's little girl Qiao Qiao was very pretty and became his new wife after getting married. She is more neatly dressed and looks cuter. They say she is a good wife in the village. Shaoxi was a drunkard and a womanizer, and she didn't care about her age. Whenever she saw a good wife in a family, she would go to their house and sit around, ever since Qiao Qiao got married. He often went to the white dog. There was nothing that could be done to Bai Go, a kid like him, and old man Xiao Fu couldn't afford to offend him. When he came, everyone had no choice but to do their own work in silence and leave when he got bored. One day Leng Yuan was at Bai Go's house. Bai Go talked to him about how contemptuous Shaoxi was, and Leng Yuan said, "Why hasn't the Communist Party come yet? Didn't your brother-in-law say that when he comes, he will kill Shaoxi and the other bad guys?" At this time, Shaoxi had just walked to the courtyard. "Here, I heard this." He walked back quietly. Shaoxi went back and told Chuanxi this. Chuanxi had been criticized by the district leader for failing to prevent communism in the past few days, so he immediately wrote a report on the matter and submitted it to the district leader as a credit to himself. The district group reported to the county group, and the county group transferred to the county government. The county government sent police to arrest Tai Suo. If it had been half a year earlier, Iron Lock would have been dead. It was already the summer of the 25th year of the Republic of China, and the Communist Party had returned to Shaanxi. Shaanxi's frantic drive to anti-communist has passed. Moreover, when the county magistrate was at his peak last winter, the Communist Party posted a leaflet on the door of the house where he lived, scaring him so much that he couldn't sleep for several nights. Sleep. In the future, I became a little more polite to the Communist Party, so I also relaxed a little more about the Iron Lock case. After questioning Tai Suo, he felt that although he had some relationship with the Communist Party, the relationship was too small and he could neither kill nor let go. Because the Justice Corps asked each village for anti-communist results, almost every village reported random reports, and there were a large group of people involved in cases like Lijiazhuang. Later, the county magistrate asked for permission and gave them a training class. They were asked to work hard inside and receive training at the same time. The training course was still the same as what Tai Suo had heard Shaoxi Chuanxi say thousands of times. The people who run this training class see that these trainees are all honest and hard-working people. He treated them as his unpaid assistants and made them do hard work for more than a year. Even after the July 7th incident, many people in the provincial capital had asked for the release of all political prisoners, but they were still reluctant to release even one. Later, the Sacrifice League came to mobilize the masses to resist Japan, so they negotiated with the county government to release these people. The Sacrifice League is the abbreviation of the Shaanxi Province Sacrifice for National Salvation League, a local mass anti-Japanese group established in Shaanxi Province from 1936 to the early days of the anti-Japanese war. The group works closely with the Communist Party. He played an important role in the anti-Japanese war in Shaanxi. In December 1939, Yan Xishan openly launched a campaign to destroy the Sacrifice League in western Shaanxi Province. Many Communist Party members, cadres of the Sacrifice League and progressive elements among the masses were brutally killed. Chapter 7. After the July 7th incident, the League of Sacrifice for National Salvation organized by Shaanxi patriots sent people to the county to mobilize the masses to resist Japan. At this time, The 8th Route Army had already marched to Shaanxi and fought many major battles, annihilating the Japanese Sakigake Division at Pingxingwan. The Anti-Communist Protection Group has also been disbanded, and there is no reason why this locked-in training class should not end. At the end of the day, the Sacrifice Alliance sent someone to give them a speech. The speech was very simple and clear. It was nothing more than the Kuomintang and the Communist Party have cooperated. This kind of anti-communist training class should have ended long ago. Anyone who continues to oppose the communists in the future will be stubborn. Everyone must enthusiastically participate in the anti-Japanese work when we go back. These types of words were used to mobilize the masses in the early days of the anti-Japanese war. However, most of the people who listened were rounded up and worked hard for more than a year because they mentioned the Communist Party in gossip. During this period of more than a year, they did not even dare to mention the word communist. Then they listened. After saying this, I was naturally relieved. I feel like the world has changed. Locking himself, obedience comes second, he pays attention to the person speaking. When this man first walked onto the podium, he saw that he looked a bit like Lijiazhuang. He had thick hair and his eyes seemed to be flashing. Even though it had been 6 or 7 years, his appearance had not changed much. The expression and tone of his words were the same as when he first moved to the Manchu tomb and listened to his first speech in the courtyard. When this person was speaking, he didn't pay attention to what he was saying. He just studied how the person spoke, how he raised his hands, how he turned around. The more he looked at it, the more he looked like him. The more it sounds like. The speech ended at almost 1 o'clock, and everyone went back to their rooms to pack their luggage and prepare to go home. Tai Sua didn't even bother to go back to his room, and pushed his way through the crowd to rush towards the speaker. He caught up and originally wanted to ask if it was Lijiazhuang. When I walked up to him, I saw that he was wearing a new military uniform. I was covered in dust and dirt, and my clothes were full of holes. I felt embarrassed. If it wasn't Lijiazhuang, what should I say? He thought like this, but he was too embarrassed to speak. But he felt it again. If it was really Lijiazhuang, he couldn't miss it in person, so he couldn't bear to relax and followed him out of the street. He hadn't seen the scenery on the street for more than a year, so he didn't care to take a closer look and just followed people. After following him for a while, he thought, he would never know without asking. He mustered up the courage to take a few steps and asked, "Hey, are you Mr. Lijiazhuang?" The man stopped immediately, turned around and flashed at him with his lightning-like eyes, and was stunned for a moment before returning to hold him. The hand said, "It looks so familiar, why can't you remember it?" Tai Sua said, "In Taiyuan Manchu tomb." The man said with a smile, yes. He is the one who moved there later, right? He asked a lot of questions at night, right? Tai Sua said, "That's right." He held his hand tighter and said, "Good old friend. Let's go. Come and sit at my place." He changed his left hand to hold Tai Sua's right hand and walked with him, asking Tai Sua his name, address, and family situation. Tai Sua naturally also asked him about things after his arrest. Tai Sua said because he was drunk. A few small talk. He was imprisoned and worked hard for more than a year. Not only did he get out of the cage, but he also heard that the real communists were not allowed to be captured. He also met what he thought was the best person in the world. How happy do you think he would be? He nodded repeatedly and said secretly, "This feels like the world again." Although he and Lijiazhuang were holding hands and walking side by side, he always turned his head to look at Lijiazhuang, as if he was afraid that he would run away. The bustle on the street, such as Beijing Guangzhou groceries, restaurants and hotels, grain markets, vegetable stalls and butcher shops, people are crowded and bumping into each other. It seemed to him that he didn't care, as if he didn't see anything, only Lijiazhuang beside him. After a while, he walked to the Sacrifice League. After Lijiazhuang invited him to have a cup of tea, he asked him about the situation in the village in recent years. After Tai Suo came back from Taiyuan. I have been feeling depressed for the past 6 or 7 years, and I wish I could talk to someone like Lijiazhuang. Now that I have met the original person, how can I not talk to him? He was afraid that the matter was too long, and Lijiazhuang was impatient to listen, so he only told it briefly. Lijiazhuang instead asked him to explain it in more detail. If you don't understand something, you'll stop and ask for details. When someone's name is mentioned, you'll also be asked what the characters are. As he talked, Lijiazhuang took notes. After talking for a while, it was already noon, so Lijiazhuang left him to eat in the meeting. During the meal, he was introduced to 5 or 6 comrades who were working in the conference. After dinner, we continued to talk about who was the village chief, who was the head of the Justice Regiment, who was the head of the Anti-Communist Security Regiment, and what they did every day when they got up. Why I was locked up and worked hard for more than a year. I talked about it in detail. After the conversation, Lijiazhuang said to him, "We sent people here to visit your village once, but the people who went there didn't understand the situations you mentioned. Now there is a little change in your village." As he said that, he took out the report letter sent by the person who was sent and looked at it. The village chief has been replaced by someone from another village. I heard that he was trained in Taiyuan. Lijiazhuang became the village deputy. The Anti-Communist Defense Corps was changed to the Anti-Japanese Self-Defense Force. However, the captain is still Xiaoxi, and the leader of the justice team is still Chuanxi. After hearing this change, Tai Suo sighed and said, "Is it possible that the power of people like Lijiazhuang, Xiaoxi, Chuanxi and others is nailed down by iron nails? Why is it always them when I switch? Didn't you say, until these bad guys are defeated, there will be no truth in the world? Didn't you say, there is a way to bring everyone together? It's a pity that you didn't tell me about this method at that time and asked others to arrest you. Now I can learn this lesson." Lijiazhuang laughed and said, "Good old friend of mine. You are such a warm-hearted person. I can tell you this method today. This method is not surprising, it is to organize everyone. It's very general to say so, let's talk about it slowly in the future. Our Sacrifice League is here specifically to do this. Not only do we have to deal with these guys, but the most important thing is to resist Japanese imperialism. But don't deal with these guys. Most of the good people were so suppressed by them that they could not hold their heads up. How could they still have the heart to resist Japan? I can't explain these things immediately. I will go to the villages in your area in a day or 2. I can also visit your villages first. Let's talk in detail at that time. You haven't been back for more than a year. You can go back and have a look first. I'll go there in a few days." Tai Suo said again, "Can you tell me how to organize everyone first? I'll go back and talk to a few of my own people first." I've never seen him so enthusiastic. He replied repeatedly, "Yes, yes. You can join our Sacrifice Alliance first." After saying that, he took out a copy of the Constitution of the Sacrifice Alliance and a membership application form, explained it to him, and then asked him if he could write. Meeting. He said he couldn't write well. Lijiazhuang asked him one by one and filled it out for him. After he finished writing, he handed it to him to look at and asked him if he wrote it correctly. After reading it, he completely agreed and handed it to Lijiazhuang to put away. Lijiazhuang sued him again, just accept members like this. If you have anything to do in the future. When everyone meets and decides what to do, this is called organizing. He took some articles of association to him and said, when you go back and meet a person you think is a really good person, you can ask him if he is willing to join the association. If he is willing, you can be his introducer. Introduce him to the membership. The comrade we sent out is surnamed Wang, and he is still working in your area. Anyone who wants to join the association can fill out a volunteer form with him, and I can write him a letter. As he said that, he wrote a letter and gave it to Tai Sua. When it falls too fast. Tai Sua just resigned from Lijiazhuang and went back to pack his luggage in the same circle where he had lived for more than a year. When he returned, he saw that the people had left, the stove had stopped, and he was left with only a rag and a few rags piled in a pile of scattered straw. After he tied these things up, it was getting dark and I had no money to stay in a hotel, so I had to go to the Zemengui to find Lijiazhuang and stay overnight. The next morning, Lijiazhuang asked him to have breakfast again, and he went home. On the way home, he was so happy that he wanted to talk, but he was alone. I wanted to say something but had nowhere to say it. Sometimes I would sing a few lines from an opera, and sometimes I would look up to the sky and shout, "This is like the world again." I jogged for 80 miles until I ran back to the village. It was the time when the autumn harvest was over, and many people in the village were cutting grass on the threshing floor. Although Tai was left behind, he could still work for a while. Seeing that he was back, everyone immediately stopped working and gathered around him to inquire. The children reported it to Erniu, who also came to the field to see him. Naturally, his first message was to report, "Lijiazhuang is here." The news just came out. The eyes of everyone in the circle suddenly widened a lot, and they all asked in unison, "Really? Where is it?" He then told the story of meeting Lijiazhuang in the county. It turns out that Lijiazhuang is known in this village. They were just a few people who listened to Tai Sua's conversation at the old man Xiufu's house on the 3rd day of the first lunar month last year. But since Tai Sua was arrested, more and more people knew about it, because once Tai Sua was arrested, no one wanted to find out why you are here. As a result, what Tai Sua had talked about that night was passed on from Leng Yuan's mouth. Later, when Chuanxi found out, he brought Leng Yuan to the temple and asked him to tell him in public. Chuanxi wanted to use Leng Yuan's words to prove that Tai Sua really had something to do with the Communist Party. In order to aggravate his crime, but after telling him, the whole village knew that there was a good person like Lijiazhuang in the world. When everyone saw Tai Sua and said that Lijiazhuang was coming in a few days, they all said, "I want to see what kind of person he is when he comes." This evening, Tai Sua went to old man Xiufu again and asked him about the recent changes in the village office staff. What old man Xiufu said was similar to the report Lijiazhuang received from Comrade Wang, except that the new village chief was a classmate of Chuanxi. It's been trained. He could just talk a few empty words about resisting Japan and saving the country, but he acted with the same enthusiasm as Li Ruzhen. In fact, he was just like the village chief. Talking about Comrade Wang sent by the Sacrifice League, the old man Xiufu said, "He is a child of 16 or 17 years old. He speaks very smartly and writes well. Unfortunately, he is too young and unsophisticated." During the few days he came, it was the time of autumn harvest and everyone was so busy that he decided to call everyone for a meeting at this time. Lao Song beat the gong several times, but everyone was in the fields. Only 7 or 8 old men and a few 6 or 7-year-old children were gathered. He didn't know it was because people were busy, and he said that everyone was not enthusiastic. Tai Suo also mentioned that Xiao Cheng asked him to come back and organize the Sacrifice Alliance. The old man Xiu Fu said, "It has already been organized." "I see no use in that." Tai Suo felt strange and asked hurriedly, "When was it organized? Who organized it?" Xiu Fu old man said, "When the boy named Wang came, he asked the village chief to find him someone who could enthusiastically do things for everyone during busy times. No serious person had time, so the village chief found a little boy to sit with him for a long time. After he left, Xiao Mao told the villagers that he had been asked to organize a sacrifice alliance. He had just made a list of names from house to house the day before yesterday, but he didn't know if the registration had been submitted. After hearing this, Tai Suo shook his head and said, "I didn't expect these guys to be so naked and not miss any of the cracks." Although he ran 80 miles during the day and talked for a while at night, he still did not fall asleep when he returned. Since his arrest, Erniu went to the city to visit him 3 times. The first time, she was told that there was no judgment yet and they were not allowed to meet her. The second and third time, although they did meet her, they only exchanged a few words through the door, and then they pushed her away, so they did not see her husband clearly. "How tired I am. I just hope he can come out soon." At this time, the person came back, but his appearance was completely messed up. His hair was like a piece of felt stuck to his head, his face was like a yellow pear, his sleeves were torn like 2 broken cattail fans, and his whole body was as dirty as if it had been painted. 2 elbows, 2 paints, shoulders. The skin on the buttocks was exposed, and large and small lice crawled in and out of the holes in the clothes. Erniu was naturally very sad when she saw that her man had been ruined like this, so she asked him how he was doing in the county. Listen to Tai Suo talk about how to drink 60-year-old Laotsang rice soup. How she slept in the haystack, how heavy the pole was, and how thick the whip she received, made her hug the iron chain and cry. Tai Suo has been soft-hearted since he was a child. Although he has become a little tougher in the past few years, he has not seen a relative in more than a year. Now he will see someone taking pity on him like this. How could I not feel sad, so I couldn't help crying with her. The couple cried for a while, and Erniu talked about the difficulties at home in the past year. Finally, Tai Suo told her that the world had changed and that she would soon find a way to defeat those bad guys.